Part 29. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 289. What? When Leon heard the voice and content of the broadcast, he looked surprised and jumped up from his chair. In order not to expose Leon's name, Ada used the title assistant here, and Leon knew she was calling him as soon as he heard it. After escaping Sadler's pursuit, she did not stay away from the Illuminati Research Institute, but came back. After Sadler left, she returned to the Parasite Institute and copied all the information. In addition, she also learned on the computer that the Lewis Research Laboratory was special. It was not located in the current Research Institute, but was set up separately in the temple. So she planned to set off to the temple to confirm whether there was the amber she needed in Lewis' research room. But she had just sneaked into the temple when she met Sadler, who came back in a hurry. Sadler did not find Ada hiding, but she did not dare to go deeper into it rashly. There is no map provided by Lewis for this place, and the Institute's computer does not save the topographic map here. It wasn't until a large number of hidden bugs flew out of the temple that Ada felt that the time was right to continue sneaking in. But in the end she was discovered by the invisible bug controlled by Sadler. Soon after she was trapped by the bug, Sadler took matters into his own hands and captured Ada. As for Ada, the mouse, Sadler did not even think of injecting her with Plaka parasites. He had murderous intentions and was ready to crush her. Ada saw this and pretended not to know the other person's murderous intentions, and said cruelly that her righteous companions would definitely come to save her. When Sadler heard this, he immediately thought of surrounding the area for reinforcements. He planned to use the woman in front of him to lure other people together, and then he would kill them all in one fell swoop, and then continue to complete his plan to rule the world. That's why this island-wide broadcast was launched. Assistant, does this refer to Leon? Ashley looked at Leon. Before Leon could answer, Sadler's voice came over the radio. Your companions have been captured by me. You are clearly trying to prevent the spread of the Holy Lord's glory throughout the world, but you claim to be a righteous partner. You shouldn't just die without saving me, right? I will wait for you at the end of the temple and give you the gift of God. Judgment. With that, the broadcast ended without Sadler repeating himself. Luo Guang tilted his head and looked at the others. Did you meet that guy again later? We didn't say we were partners of justice, right? Wait a minute, aren't we the righteous party? She and others have been fighting to deal with the bad guys who are trying to rule the world, so Ashley has always considered herself a good person on the side of justice. Now hearing Luo Guang's words, she suddenly thought that Luo Guang didn't think so. Ashley, you misunderstood me. We have the knight Don Quixote and the servant Sancho. How come we are not on the side of justice? Luo Guang explained, I suspect that what the righteous partner said was said by Ada. Let's not mention the possibility that the other party and Sadler are colluding together. She must have no good intentions and said this deliberately just to let us rescue her. When Lewis heard Luo Guang call him Don Quixote, he laughed like a child. I like that name. Leon didn't have time to care about being labeled as a servant again. He picked up the weapon beside him and said, no matter what, we can't just die without saving her. She is still your mission target, Luo Guang. Luo Guang stood up, picked up the weapon, shrugged and said, I didn't say not to save him, and the Guangming sect should also be swept into the trash can of history, but we can't just run into each other's trap. But the other side has hostages, and we can't delay too long. The enemy's trap is nothing more than dividing and surrounding us. There shouldn't be any other strategies. Lion's speculation is more in line with the current situation, but for Sadler, he has not prepared any traps, because he plans to directly use the power given to him by the Plaka parasite in his body to solve the enemy. Based on what I know about this place, I think those enemies are basically Sadler and those hidden bugs. Sadler's rule of the world requires Ashley to have parasites in her body. This problem has been solved now, so the Illuminati is already the end of the strong crossbow. Lewis analyzed the situation and said, it should be Sadler who plans to end the game himself. You mean the enemy will concentrate all their strength to fight us? Luo Guang asked. That's right, Sadler wouldn't lay a trap himself, it's not in line with his status. Moreover, he is very conceited and addicted to the power of parasites, so it is unlikely that he will be a trap. If he really wanted to say that, wouldn't it be better if he directly threatened us on the radio to lay down our weapons and surrender? There is no need to set up a trap at all. After Lewis finished speaking, the others nodded in agreement. Leon immediately said, in that case, let's set off quickly. Because he had already played Princess Don Quixote before, he was too embarrassed to continue playing here, otherwise when Leon asked who was his princess, he would not be able to answer well in front of Ashley. Lewis stood up, moved his shoulders, and shouldered the two RPG-7 rocket launchers again. Oh, why do I, a knight, do the work of a servant? Ashley, forget it, let's go with us. Luo Guang thought about letting Ashley stay here, but in the end he gave up the idea and just let Xiaobai continue to protect her. Ashley's internal parasites were removed, and she felt relaxed. She showed a smile as bright as the sun and said, am I your partner now? This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. Ashley, you have always been, Luo Guang replied. Then can I become an agent like you? Then you have to learn a lot of things, which is not easy. Luo Guang, how can you instigate a princess to go to the battlefield? Lewis joined the topic, and several people came to the door of the laboratory in a noisy manner. Did you forget anything? Luo Guang said to Lewis, who took out the key to open the door. Not nostalgic, nor reluctant, Lewis looked back at the laboratory where he studied parasites day and night. As if cutting off the connection with the past, Lewis said, no more. Not only did Lewis confirm that nothing was left behind, he also burned all his paper research materials to ensure that people in the future would not find any materials related to parasite research in this place. Leaving the laboratory, it was not far from the altar of the temple. Just like the sacrificial activities in ancient times, Ada was lying on the altar with her eyes closed, and standing next to her was Sadler. Sadler would not do such a lowly thing as tying people up, so Ada was not tied up. After she finished speaking on the radio, she was strangled by the tentacles and then directly moved here by the hidden worms. Seeing Luo Guang and the others cautiously walk in, Sadler's eyes emitting golden light widened. Welcome to the altar of the Church of Light, but your number seems to be wrong. Only Luo Guang and Leon entered the temple, while Lewis, Ashley, Xiaobai and others who carried rocket launchers stayed outside. This was to protect Lewis and Ashley, and the two RPG-7 rocket launchers were their big killers against giant biochemical monsters, so they couldn't show them to the opponent now. Luo Guang had already told Lewis and the others that when the giant monster appeared and was temporarily knocked down by him and others, they would come with RPGs to make up for the final blow. Luo Guang first took a photo of Ada and sent it to Simmons, then said to Sadler, you got one thing wrong, we are not on the same side as her. Humph, do you think I will believe it? I have understood all your plans clearly. You are just her decoy troops, just to divert my attention, and then she will be responsible for stealing the property of our holy church. Apparently Ada also told Sadler a lot of lies, and the reason why Sadler believed it was because every time he was attracted by Luo Guang's battle, Ada successfully took advantage of his loopholes. I'll give you a chance now. Sadler stretched out his hand to Luo Guang and said, join my church, or meet your death here. Sorry, I'm not interested in the world you rule. You don't understand the greatness of our holy church at all. Only our Church of Light can bring the world into an eternal era of peace. Do you mean that everyone will become your slaves? Leon took a step forward and questioned. Sadler shook his head and said, they are not slaves. With the help of parasites, they will get real freedom, no longer troubled by money, nor distressed by love. Only after abandoning emotions can they truly get the life they want. Have you asked everyone if they are willing? You are not qualified to make decisions for others, let alone decide the future of mankind. How naive! Sadler pulled down his hood, revealing his bald head and tentacles waving in the air. A Plaka parasite parasitized directly on the back of his head, and the outline of the parasite inside could be seen from the surface. Humanity is in endless disasters now because of the lack of the Lord's leadership. As long as I rule the world, I can eliminate all man-made disasters in the world, including the biochemical crisis that has become more and more frequent recently. Leon and Sadler were arguing about the right and wrong of their beliefs, and Luo Guang would not do the kind of thing to persuade others. He had been paying attention to Ada and found that the other party's fingers were shaking slightly, which was a signal to Luo Guang and others. I woke up and can act at any time. Luo Guang analyzed the other party's signal in his mind. Leon didn't notice this and shouted angrily, "You said so much, but it can't cover up that what you did was just for your own ambition. Since you fools are still stubborn, I will force you to accept my ideas for the world, so that the Lord." Sadler couldn't argue with Leon with his perverse logic, and finally felt that he had to use force to solve the problem. Luo Guang took out his gun and shot in one go, interrupting the other party. "Leon, in fact, there is no need to say so much nonsense to this kind of cult leader. They are good at spreading perverse ideas, otherwise they can't confuse others." Bang bang bang. There was another round of gunfire. Ada stood up, took out her spare pistol from her waist, and shot 3 times directly at the back of Sadler's head. But Sadler seemed to have practiced the iron head skill, his head didn't move at all, and he took the bullets like this. "Run!" Leon saw the fierce light in Sadler's eyes and shouted to Ada. Too late, Sadler turned around, and the tentacles in his sleeves whipped at Ada quickly. Ada rolled over and hid directly behind the altar, but the tentacles, like those soft weapons, used the corners of the altar as a fulcrum and turned to attack the enemies behind. Fortunately, she didn't think everything was fine after hiding behind, and immediately crawled to the side. Leon naturally couldn't bear to see Ada being chased by the enemy, so he took the MP5 submachine gun in his hand and fired at Sadler, but Sadler was like nothing happened after being hit by 30 bullets. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. Luo Guang observed the other party, wondering if the other party was also the type who could hide his weaknesses like Krauser. However, he didn't stop his actions. After Leon ran out of bullets, he shot the bullets of the assault rifle into the enemy's body to cover Leon to change bullets. The penetration power of the assault rifle's 5.56mm bullet is obviously much stronger than Lion's 9mm bullet. The increasingly angry expression on Sadler's face told Luo Guang that he had successfully caused damage to the enemy. "Come out, my people," Sadler raised the scepter of the Church of Light and called. Hidden insects appeared from all around and attacked Luo Guang and his men. Being attacked by hidden insects, they had no chance to continue attacking Sadler for a while. Sadler waved his other empty hand, and the tentacles in his sleeves continued to attack. This time, the target was Luo Guang. It was indeed Luo Guang's previous attack that attracted his attack hatred. Luo Guang threw the assault rifle behind him, took out the invisible saber and waved it in front of him, cutting off all the tentacles in order to reduce the energy in the enemy's body. He didn't think about hiding any strength now. Leon would keep it secret, and he would trade with Ada later. He would have his own way at that time. As for the possibility that Ada had an HCF camera on her, Luo Guang thought it was basically zero. That woman didn't like being stared at all the time. Sadler's tentacles were all cut off by Luo Guang, which made him lose face. He immediately commanded some hidden insects to besiege Luo Guang to gain a gap for him to attack. The hidden insects rushed towards Luo Guang from all directions at the same time, but were instantly swept away by Luo Guang's 360-degree spinning slash. The leader of the Church of Light found the right time and stabbed Luo Guang with his tentacle, stabbing Luo Guang's chest in one go. Before Sadler could smile in triumph, the tentacle was cut off by Luo Guang again. "What are you laughing at, Baldy?" Luo Guang had just finished speaking when an explosion sounded behind the enemy, and the steel ball in the fragmentation grenade shot Sadler directly through. Luo Guang had used the spinning slash with one hand before, so naturally his other hand was not idle either, throwing the fragmentation grenade with the safety pin pulled out with one hand. "Ah!" Sadler's painful voice echoed in the altar, and it was obvious that Luo Guang had directly damaged the placa parasite in his body. This evolutionary surgery was mentioned before, and Krauser was the second person to undergo the surgery, and the first person was Sadler. Compared with Krauser, he had more parasites in his body, a total of 5. Although Luo Guang's fragmentation grenade caused severe damage to him, it failed to kill any of the parasites in his body, especially the one at the back of his head that was best protected. After the pain, all the parasites in Sadler's body were intact, and he was filled with more anger. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 290. Ada's backup gun only had one magazine, so after avoiding Sadler's attack, she chose to meet up with Leon. Coincidentally, the hidden bugs joined the battlefield at this time, and some of them were interested in her and immediately rushed to her position. Ada kept walking, turned her head and fired, and there was no time for her to aim more, but these hidden bugs had no defense, so even if there was no headshot, the hidden bugs still fell to the ground one after another. But the bullets in the backup gun were limited, and she couldn't deal with all the hidden bugs chasing her. She had to throw away the pistol with empty bullets and run at full speed. Ada rolled to avoid the attack when the enemy dived. After dealing with the enemy who rushed over, Leon happened to see her predicament and immediately replaced the submachine gun in his hand with a new magazine. This weapon was just right for dealing with hidden bugs. Luo turned over, while dodging the attack of the hidden bugs, he approached Ada's direction, intending to lend the semi-automatic rifle behind him to Ada. With a round of sniping, Leon helped Ada deal with the hidden bugs chasing behind him. "Be careful behind you." Ada was also paying attention to Leon's position and saw the hidden bugs behind him diving. There was no enemy in front of Leon, so he rushed forward without hesitation, then rolled up and threw the submachine gun in his hand directly to Ada. "Go!" Ada caught the submachine gun, turned the muzzle at the enemy chasing behind Leon, and emptied all the bullets. The two met, and there was no time to chat with them. Leon directly handed over 3 submachine gun magazines, then pulled out his pistol, first repelled the hidden bugs around, and then replaced the SL8-1 rifle on his back. Suddenly a painful cry came. It was Sadler who was blown up by Luo Guang's grenade. The hidden bug flying in the air stopped, and then immediately rushed towards Luo Guang. Luo Guang rushed towards Sadler, replaced the magazine for his assault rifle, and jumped up with a knight's flying kick to kick the hidden bug blocking his way. He raised his gun and shot as soon as he landed. Sadler raised his arm to protect his head and blocked the 3 bullets that were aimed at his head. While all the hidden bugs were flying towards Luo Guang, Leon took out a grenade and gave one to Ada. The two of them threw it out at the right time. Sadler blocked Luo Guang's attack and was about to say something harsh when he saw 2 grenades rolling to his feet. Before he could react, the grenade exploded, annihilating all the hidden bugs protecting him, and he himself was hit hard again, unlocking the defense of his head. After Luo Guang used his left hand to deal with the hidden bug that attacked him again, he raised his assault rifle in his right hand and pulled the trigger at Sadler. Leon had the same plan. The crosshairs of the SL8-1 sports rifle had already locked onto the enemy, and at a 90-degree angle with Luo Guang, he launched a crossfire at the enemy. Luo Guang had previously tried to use electromagnetic waves to confirm the location of the parasites in the enemy's body, but he confirmed nothing. The feedback was that Sadler was full of parasites. So he chose to attack the enemy's chest first, where the parasites usually parasitize, while Leon undoubtedly set his sights on the opponent's head, with the goal of forcing the parasites out to see if he could expose the weakness. To quickly resolve the biochemical monster, breaking the enemy's weakness is the fastest, which is the method he has summarized through anti-biochemical battles over the years. Unfortunately, Luo Guang's attack was blocked by the hidden bugs that were not afraid of death, and although Lion's attack hit Sadler's head, it was quickly repaired as before, and there was no explosion of insects. Luo Guang, do you want to use high firepower? Leon shouted to Luo Guang under the cover of Ada, meaning that he wanted to use the rocket launcher to hit a fatal blow. In order to let Lewis and the others receive the signal in time, Leon gave them his walkie-talkie, so Luo Guang could only call. Wait a little longer. After Luo Guang finished speaking, he replaced the new magazine again and continued to attack Sadler, while he was constantly approaching the opponent. The hidden bugs came one after another to protect Sadler. After the previous battle with the helicopter and the losses here, they could no longer spare manpower to counter-attack Luo Guang and his men. Sadler knew that the hidden bugs could not stop Luo Guang and his men, and he retreated with the intention of retreating. He still had a backup plan. He wants to escape. Leon immediately noticed the situation, but was stopped by a small hidden bug that suddenly flew out. Sadler had no choice but to forcibly catalyze the eggs of the hidden bugs to increase manpower. The larvae of the hidden worm are also the size of a 1-year-old cat. Although their attack power is much lower, it is enough to disrupt Luo Guang and his team's accurate shooting. Leon gave all the magazines of the MP5 submachine gun to Ada. Cover me. Got it. Little assistant Ada changed the magazine and controlled her fingers to continuously pull the trigger. Although she did not switch the gun to single-shot shooting mode, it did not affect the current single-shot accurate shooting at all. Leon slid to avoid the hidden worm that pounced on his face, and then shot at Sadler's ankle, but because the opponent was wearing a floor-length robe, he could not see the opponent's feet, so the attack missed. Flash, Luo Guang shouted and threw the saved flash stun grenade into the air. There were no merchants here, and they had not seen the existence of flash stun grenades along the way, so Luo Guang and Leon used flash stun grenades sparingly. The flash shock bomb exploded in the air, directly knocking down a large number of hidden bugs, but the strong light still affected Leon's assault and Ada's cover, causing both of them to hide behind rocks. This chapter is not finished yet. Please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. However, the bright light or loud noise was not a problem for Luo Guang. In addition to controlling Sadler's body, this flash shock bomb was mainly used to cover up Luo Guang's next attack. He had saved so much electricity before that it would be a pity not to use it to give Sadler a big boost. Before closing his eyes, Luo Guang had already memorized the terrain and distance between him and the enemy. Although he closed his eyes at this time, the memories he wrote down came to mind, making Luo Guang run as if he were walking on flat ground. Trying to deal with the enemy before he mutates was his strategy in this battle, but the enemy didn't think so. After Sadler was electrocuted, he quickly recovered and then turned to face Luo Guang. A pustule appeared on his chest. It swelled up quickly and then exploded without warning. When the pus from the enemy's body jumped out, Luo Guang didn't dare to touch it and immediately hid behind the stone monument. The pus was poured onto the stone monument, making a corrosive sound, but Leon and the others were far away, so they were not affected. They quickly continued to attack, but all their bullets were ignored by Sadler. Sadler's body contorted and began to mutate. Luo Guang also joined the attack, but it seemed to have no effect on Sadler, who was wrapped in pieces of meat. Just when Luo Guang was thinking about whether to ask Lewis to come over and give the enemy a shot, a figure appeared among the pieces of meat, jumped quickly, and got directly into a passage while no one was paying attention. The pieces of meat quickly turned into a pool of liquid, and the bullet heads fired by Luo Guang and the others fell to the ground almost at the same time. Without thinking much, Louis was called by Luo Guang to ask Sadler where he was escaping. Louis looked at the passage pointed by Luo Guang and replied seriously, "The production factory of black water. All the black water on the island is stored there. Although a batch was transported to Ramon's castle not long ago, there is no place on the island. There should be a lot of reserves." After he said this, Leon and others understood why the other party fled there. "It's not advisable to stay here for a long time, otherwise Sadler, who turns into a huge monster, will collapse in minutes," Leon said with experience. Everyone nodded and set off to chase Sadler. "Ada," Leon kept staring at Ada. When he saw that the other party did not move, he stopped and asked. Ada shrugged and said, "It was just an emergency, so we worked together." "Leon, you must not have forgotten the purpose of my coming here, right?" "Leon, let's leave first." Luo Guang turned around and shouted to Leon, and left without looking back. "I haven't forgotten, Ada. But isn't the thing you want in Luo Guang's body? Aren't you afraid that what you want will be broken in the battle?" "Then I have an excuse for a business trip." What Ada said was similar to the excuse Luo Guang mentioned before. "Help us, and I have already negotiated with Luo Guang for you." Leon knew that Luo Guang would not care if he took the credit for this matter. Ada was curious about this and said, "Oh? What did you say?" She didn't want to help, not only for personal safety, but also because she felt that only when the battle became fierce and chaotic would she have a chance to grab Amber. Leon repeated Luo Guang's plan. "There's no mention of Amber here," Ada asked. Leon shook his head. He knew that Luo Guang needed to use this thing to seduce Ada, so he did not tell the Amber that it was a fake, nor did he say that they had destroyed the Amber. Unexpectedly, Ada spoke first and asked, "Destroyed by you?" "No." "Why, with your character, you should have proposed destroying it long ago." "Because it's not on me, and Luo Guang is the captain in this mission, I have to listen to him." Ada was not very satisfied with Leon's explanation. If it were the same person as before, he would definitely have tried his best to destroy that thing, instead of giving up just because the other party was his captain. She frowned, suspecting that there was something wrong here, but she had no idea for the time being. "I can't beat him." Leon's very honest words made Ada stunned. After thinking about it, she recalled her feeling of powerlessness when she was captured in Africa, and she was really convinced by Lion's reasoning. As for stealing or backstabbing Luo Guang, Ada felt that Leon would definitely not do it, so in the end she had to find a way on her own. "Is that thing still in his backpack?" Ada first confirmed the target location. "Yes, I never saw him take it out later." "Do you know which compartment it is in the backpack?" Ada wondered if she could quickly get the Amber by cutting open Luo Guang's backpack. Leon had no clue and said, "I don't know the structure inside his backpack. I only know that the backpack is related to the backpack issued by Umbrella, but from the way he put the Amber, he might just throw it away casually. That means if I cut open the bottom of the backpack. I think the chance is very slim, and there are a lot of things in his backpack. The first thing that falls out will definitely not be the one you want, but cans and other things." Leon interrupted the other party, and if Luo Guang was offended, he felt that Ada might be beaten, and then packaged it and sent it to the superior. In his opinion, Luo Guang is the type who is generous to his friends and niggardly to his enemies. He is Luo Guang's friend, but Ada is not, so Leon looked at Ada with some concern. Yes, his reaction is too fast. Ada did not notice the strangeness of Leon's expression, but she thought quickly and said, "Why don't I make a deal with you?" This chapter is not finished yet. Please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Leon looked at Ada, who suddenly wanted to make a deal with him, with a puzzled expression on his face. "Help me get Amber, and I'll help you deal with Sadler." Seeing that Leon had something to say, Ada added, "Don't worry, I'll destroy Amber after I finish my work." The other party's words surprised Leon, and he said, "What? Isn't this what your superior wants? And it's your mission. I joined the HCF organization just to avoid the organization that has been looking for me. It's funny to say that I'm loyal for Ada. This mission is different from the situation when she took the mission when she was free, and her professional ethics sometimes change flexibly. This is the first time that Ada admitted to joining Wesker's organization in front of him, and she also said that she didn't really work for that organization. This is enough to make Leon secretly happy. Ada is not as bad as she appears. However, Leon has a doubt, but Ada, we don't have to ask you for help, it's just more people and more strength. You should have seen Luo Guang's reaction just now. Do you trust him so much? He is different from you. He is not the kind of person who wants to exterminate the biochemical crisis. Ada is worried that her assistant has been deceived. Leon was a little unhappy. Ada, I have been with Luo Guang for a longer time. Do you know him better than me? Then do you know that he did the same thing as me? He took out the original blood plague virus sample from the Trumbull Valley and handed it over to Umbrella and the organization behind him. Now this matter was investigated by Ada, but she did not dare to threaten Luo Guang with this, saying that if he did not let her go, she would send this matter to Luo Guang's friends and so on. She did not want to be killed to silence her. Leon did not answer immediately, but after a moment of silence, he said, I will check it later. I don't care about you, go and play by yourself. Ada reached out to touch the grappling gun on the side of her thigh, but she touched nothing and could not leave. Sadler threw away all the blacktail pistols and grappling guns she put on both sides of her thighs, but she was not searched, and the waist bag behind her was not searched, which was a blessing in disguise. Don't talk about any deal, come and help. Leon looked at Ada. This didn't sound like a request, but more like an order, which made Ada raise her eyebrows. It was rare to see Leon's strong side. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 291. There are still 40 minutes before the helicopter arrives. Luo Guang checked his watch to confirm the situation, and then he looked up at Sadler, who had changed his appearance not far away. Sadler's current appearance is very similar to the appearance of the white-robed cultists after the explosion of the insects, but his body is even larger, at least 5 or 6 meters tall. The whole body is supported by 4 long legs. There is a huge tentacle with a hook in the middle of the body of the monster, and there are 2 similar huge tentacles on the left and right of the back. The neck becomes like a long-necked ghost, and the whole stinky face is also preserved. At the same time, a huge eyeball appears in the mouth, stretching the chin. Whether it is the long legs or other tentacles, the ends are connected to a sphere, but the connection does not become bloated and fat. In addition to these, Luo Guang noticed that there is a semicircular protrusion below the knee of each long leg, which is covered with thick calcium armor. You have to atone for all this. Only Luo Guang appeared in front of Sadler, while Louis and Ashley continued to act according to the previous plan. Luo Guang was not afraid of the other party. With such a huge body, as long as the 2 helicopters loaded with weapons came over, a full round of ammunition would make Sadler regret why he grew so big. In fact, it was still a matter of energy. Sadler, like Salazar, absorbed so much black water as the energy for his mutation. In fact, if it was a reasonable mutation, it would not require so much energy. The reason why Sadler and Salazar's bodies became so huge was that they absorbed too much energy savagely, and their original bodies could not accommodate it, so they could only rely on expanding their bodies to store this energy. In the words of the system, they were overfed. Sadler, who had been waiting for Luo Guang for a long time, took a heavy step and directly rushed wildly, but Luo Guang easily dodged it and hid on a platform below. As an important building of the Church of Light, the Blackwater factory was naturally built very solidly, and Sadler's weight of more than a ton did not shake at all when he walked on it. Sadler turned and jumped, his limbs falling towards Luo Guang's position, but Luo Guang easily dodged him again, and then he shot back with a burst of bullets into the enemy's mouth. Ah! The scream meant that Luo Guang's attack took effect, but Sadler recovered quickly, and the weak spot in his mouth appeared intact in front of Luo Guang again, and then was hit again by Luo Guang's precise attack. The opponent shrank back and took a step back, hitting the steel frame. Sadler turned his head away to prevent Luo Guang from attacking his weak spot again, and at the same time raised his right front foot and swept horizontally, and two huge tentacles behind him stabbed out one after another. Luo Guang jumped to avoid it, and he was not afraid of the enemy grabbing his feet off the ground and unable to change direction with the force. It's not that he would do a double jump with his left foot on his right foot, but the purpose of his jump was not only to avoid the enemy's attack, but mainly to jump directly onto the enemy. Unlike Salazar, Sadler did not have those slender blade tentacles, so Luo Guang chose to jump directly onto Sadler's head and smash Sadler's head with his fist wearing hardened armor gloves. A large amount of black liquid gushed out from the gap in the head, and the four legs supporting Sadler's body lost their strength. The enemy fell directly to the ground and soon lost his movement. Luo Guang did not relax his vigilance. Krauser had 3 parasites in his body, so how could Sadler only have 1? He also saw that the black water on Sadler's head had stopped flowing out, showing signs of regeneration, but the weak point in Sadler's mouth did not regenerate after the liquid in the light flowed. This is not a game. As long as the blood bar is not empty, the parasites in the body cannot be eliminated. If it is a broken situation, the parasites can still be repaired, but now that Luo Guang has beaten it into a paste, it naturally cannot regenerate. However, Luo Guang did not care so much. He first kicked off all 3 of Sadler's huge tentacles with hooks to disarm the enemy's main weapons. The giant tentacles did not regenerate after being disconnected, proving that there were no parasites in the 3 tentacles, so the next target was the 4 legs, especially the semicircular protrusions, which were likely to be the weak points of the parasites. "You sinner, dare to kill me!" Sadler's voice rang out in the monster's body, and the 4 legs stood up with force. Luo Guang stabilized his balance and used the abilities he had learned before to send a large number of meaningless parasite signals to Sadler. Just like a network attack, the purpose was to paralyze the other party's brain thinking ability. Unlike controlling others, which requires confirming the enemy's will attributes, the current situation, in the words of the game, requires an intellectual confrontation. The difference in the intelligence attributes of Luo Guang and Sadler is not big, at least he cannot directly prevent the other party from thinking and reacting, but he is the one who throws garbage after all, so it is relatively easy. In addition, he has the assistance of the system, which can directly let the system continue to send garbage information to Sadler, while he concentrates on solving the enemy at the physical level. Unfortunately, the system's ability is linked to Luo Guang's intelligence attribute, and the ability to instill junk information will not be enhanced just because the system takes over. In fact, Adler can also do similar operations. The parasites in his body can actually be used as a brain, but he did not think of such a method and could not do it. The ability to control others is more like his own instinct. He has never understood the principle of this ability, let alone tap the potential of this ability. As a result, Sadler only regards this ability as controlling those controlling placas. A channel for parasites, but I never thought it could be used to attack enemies. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. But yes, those who can receive the parasite signal are those who have placa parasites in their bodies, and he can control the parasites, so why bother to think about whether this ability has other uses? Sadler stood up again and became uncoordinated on his 4 legs. He tripped over when he moved a little. Those who didn't know thought he was drunk. However, although his head was swollen, the parasite in Sadler's body still relied on instinct to react, that is, New tentacles appeared and tied to Luo Guang. Without those hidden bugs and cultists, as the bachelor commander, he could only rely on himself to get rid of Luo Guang. Night kick. Luo Guang shouted and jumped up to avoid the enemy's tentacles. At the same time, he put his legs together and kicked the semicircle on his right front leg. The natural hardness of calcium armor is not high, which is why no matter how Luo Guang hardened armor evolves, in the end it can only rely on stack thickness to withstand rifle caliber bullets. A blow with all his strength directly shattered the enemy's armor and the yoke inside, where one of the parasites was located. When Sadler faced Leon in the game, he would talk nonsense from time to time, but when facing Luo Guang, he had no intention of thinking about those words that fit the status of the leader. He was exhausted from resisting Luo Guang's spam attack. He knew that if he couldn't solve this problem, he would lose sooner or later, and his family's long-cherished wish to rule the world would come to an end. Luo Guang slid on the floor for a distance and then stopped. He turned and looked at the semicircle to confirm that the parasite he had eliminated would not be resurrected. Luo Guang, Leon's voice came from not far away. "Bring the rocket launcher over here." Luo Guang immediately turned around and shouted. In addition to Leon, Ada was also by his side. It was probably he who persuaded Ada, but Luo Guang almost finished Sadler when they were fighting each other. Luo Guang was not surprised by this. He said it was the final boss, but in fact it was not much different from the boss Ramon Salazar. This was not a game, and the difficulty would not increase much as the game progressed. To be honest, the mutations of Sadler and Ramon are not as powerful as Claus's. Luo Guang doesn't even need to use his ability to stimulate the body with electrical energy. Krause consumed all the mercenaries, and the white-robed cultists sent by Sadler were wiped out by the armed helicopters that arrived in time. Then the last defensive force sent by the leader, the hidden bugs, were also chasing the helicopters. Most of the time it was solved. In that helicopter battle, Lewis immediately found a fixed machine gun for air defense while Leon was covering the helicopter. It can be said that he made a great contribution and provided help for the current battle. On the other hand, Luo Guang had prepared for the final battle with the enemy early, and kept fighting with fighting. He learned and perfected his combat strategy in the constant battles against parasites, so he became more and more skillful in dealing with the enemies here. The formula for victory has been written before the war begins. Then you only need to constantly make corrections according to changes in the situation during the battle to ensure that you will not capsize. That's why Luo Guang just said a word and went after Sadler directly. Because in his plan, neither Leon nor Ada was in the equation for victory. Even if Sadler blocks his own spam attack, he is not afraid of confronting the opponent head-on. His own body that combines various viruses is his biggest trump card. Sadler, who was only supported by his 3 legs, let out an unknown roar from his body. Luo Guang was not idle while waiting for Leon to bring the rocket launcher. While paying some attention to Ada, the guy who had been watching since he came over, he threw the fragmentation grenade on him and continued to consume the energy in the enemy's body. Leon came back quickly, carrying a rocket launcher on his shoulder and another on his back. "RPG," shouted. Leon knelt down on his knees, aimed at the center of Sadler, and fired a rocket. The high-explosive warhead exploded directly in the center of the enemy, and then Luo Guang realized that the opponent had lost the ability to receive the parasite signal. "Have we solved each other?" Leon asked, holding the remaining rocket launcher on his shoulder. Although after the parasite signal was transmitted, there was no feeling of being received, but Luo Guang looked at the parasite's weak points on the 3 legs that had not been smashed and did not dare to make a judgment. Luo Guang spoke directly with actions. He first used a shotgun to smash the semicircular armor on the enemy's feet, and then put on an assault rifle to prepare to attack the weak spot. At this moment, a tentacle suddenly appeared from the enemy's remains and stabbed Luo Guang directly. Luo Guang's eyes caught the attack, and his brain reacted, but he was in the process of raising the M4 assault rifle with both hands, leaving him no time to react. This tentacle did not have a bone blade on it. After hitting Luo Guang's body, it stuck directly to Luo Guang's body like an octopus, and then a brute force pulled Luo Guang towards Sadler's remains. Luo Guang directly crushed the enemy's tentacles with his hands, but due to inertia, his feet were in the air, so he could not change the situation of approaching Sadler. "Go to hell, sinner," Sadler's voice came from 3 places on the mutilated body. The place where the sound came from was naturally the place where parasites were present. What appeared earlier than this sentence was the giant tentacle that was cut off by Luo Guang before. Like the tentacles of Luo Guang before, it emerged from the remains of the body. As soon as Sadler finished speaking, Luo Guang was knocked out by the giant tentacle and fell off the cliff by the sea. When Leon saw this scene, he was eager to run over, but Ada's pupils opened slightly, and the grappling gun on her body was gone, otherwise this would be an excellent opportunity to snatch Amber. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. But the sound from Sadler's side made Leon immediately stop and raise the rocket launcher. I saw Sadler's body changing, and the remaining fleshy parts were gathered around the 3 long legs with parasites. When the mutation was completed, 3 Sadlers with slight differences in height appeared in front of Leon and the others at the same time. Leon immediately put the rocket launcher on his back and took the SL-8-1 rifle. He only had the last rocket, and it was an armor-piercing warhead. 1 shot could not deal with 3 enemies. Luo Guang failed to sense that Sadler was absorbing his junk signal, not because he was dead, but because the enemy finally found a way to block Luo Guang's junk signal. Even though Luo Guang dismantled his tentacles before, he didn't fight back because Sadler was quickly adjusting his strategy and thinking of ways to block Luo Guang's spam signals. Later, although Lion's high explosive warhead caused him huge damage and even blew up half of his body, he cut off the pain himself and did not expose the fact that he was still alive because of the sound of pain. As for why there were 3 Sadlers, it was because Sadler felt that even having so many parasites in his body would not help. As the same individual, he did not exert the effect of 1 add 1 greater than 2, so he split on a whim. Out of 3 bodies, 1 parasite controls 1 body, so that it can share its own pressure. Luo Guang was thrown into the cliff and his life and death were unknown. Sadler in the middle turned to look at Leon. He could no longer feel the existence of parasites in the opponent's body, it is blasphemous and contrary to nature. You actually gave up what Heavenly Father gave you, God's gift. But precisely because of this, God has the meaning of existence, just to save people like you who have committed such heinous sins. Sadler in the middle was still talking, but God will not give up on you, stupid child. Kneel before God, please pray for his forgiveness before tomorrow. He will give you his holy gift again and continue to protect you. No. I don't think he is qualified to receive God's protection. I think so too. Compared to this man, the woman next to him seems to be more worthy of God's protection. The 2 Sadlers on the left and right suddenly spoke against the words of the Sadler in the middle. What? Sadler in the middle had an expression of disbelief on his face, that he was actually in conflict with his own opinion. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 292. Are they playing a 3-person talk show? Leon thought in his mind, looking at them with a strange look on his face, but did not act rashly. It wasn't that he wanted to make a quarrel or that he didn't know the importance of a sneak attack, but that he saw that there seemed to be a conflict between the enemies. If he took action rashly now, it would be very likely that the 3 Sadlers on the opposite side would fight against him with the same hatred. You are all part of me, how could you go against my will? Sadler in the middle roared angrily. Sadler on the right looked unhappy and said, you are so boring. You only know how to rule the world all day long. What's the fun in that? Why not find more hotbeds, do more exercises, and continue the family lineage? What are you talking about? That woman is not qualified to receive my protection. Speaking of which, what did you do with the one in the middle? Why didn't you just grab the strong man and give him a holy gift? Instead of giving him a blow to knock him off the cliff. Then strong people are the talents that our Guangming sect needs most. Sadler on the left seemed to disagree with what was said on the right, and spoke in rapid succession. If Luo Guang were here, he would definitely complain that Sadler's operation was very similar to a mysterious ritual in the East called beheading three corpses. The parasite in Sadler's body in the middle is actually the one with special organs. After mutating into a huge monster, he is not stupid enough to put the most important parasite's weakness directly in the middle to expose it to the enemy. It is placed in the relatively safe semicircular armor on the left rear. Although more parasites were implanted, and they were all dominant Plaka, in fact, the original one still had the highest power in its body, commanding the actions of other parasites. Otherwise, if the 5 dominant parasites had their own affairs, Sadler would have gone crazy and become a regenerator, or the internal parasite would have decided to carve up his body, directly dividing Sadler into 5 parts. But the problem is that in order to block Luo Guang's junk signals, Sadler also cut off the connection between other parasites in the body. Being inexperienced, he made an irreversible mistake. Those independent Sadlers naturally had their own ideas. They never wanted to return to the control of other parasites, so they did not lift the shield. There is only one Plaka in a host. This is the long-standing tradition or nature of Plaka parasites. Although Sadler and Krause can surgically control the original parasites in their bodies to control other parasites, biological instincts cannot be eradicated overnight. In the middle, Sadler's face became more and more gloomy. You are all a part of me. Hurry up and open your souls and return to the embrace of God again. What are you talking about? We have always been under the protection of God. Sadler on the right looked dissatisfied. Do you want to enjoy the glory of the Lord alone? Sadler on the left became wary. Why do you say that we are a part of you? I am the real Sadler. Yes, I am also the real Sadler. You should obey my instructions, recruit beauties from all over the world, and work with me to optimize human genes. Sadler on the right suddenly realized. Leon, who was watching, felt that Sadler, the shortest one on the right, was not very bright and his style of painting was different from the other two. Ada slowly moved her position, intending to confirm whether she could pick up the backpack after Luo Guang fell. But the Sadler on the right has been paying attention to the iceberg beauty Ada. As soon as she moved, the Sadler immediately shouted, "Where do you want to escape?" Ugh! Sadler on the right turned his attention to Ada, and was attacked by Sadler in the middle as soon as he opened his mouth. The tentacles of Sadler's body shot out from his back and directly captured the Sadler on the right, but the Sadler on the left also had tentacles shot out from his back, blocking the attack. The more aggressive Sadler on the left is not only defensive, he also has the same idea. There can only be one God, so why can't it be him? Can't we just deal with the other guys? Leon took a few steps back to make sure he had enough reaction time to deal with the enemy's tentacles. The Sadler who only had CC in his mind was directly eliminated by the main body Sadler, and the remaining Mukyang Sadler directly started fighting with the main body, leaving Leon and the others aside. Taking advantage of this situation, Ada went directly to the edge of the cliff and watched the rough waves crashing against the cliff below. There was nowhere to be found Luo Guang and his backpack. Now that she encountered the situation, Ada immediately thought about how to stop the loss. The best way was to bring Louis back, but bringing back a living person was much more difficult than bringing a gadget like Amber, and Ada glanced towards Leon. In the battle between the two Sadlers, the main body has the upper hand. Just when he was about to deal with the other disobedient self, Leon shot and interrupted the movement of Sadler's body. The Sadler who was strong by Mu found an opportunity. A tentacle broke through the defense of the body and directly hit him. Penetrate the parasite behind the main body's brain and win. Then the arrogant Sadler turned to look at Leon. Humph, it seems that I underestimated you before. Leon replied directly with a bullet. Perhaps it was because of Sadler's body. He thought that the parasite in Sadler's body in front of him was also in the back of his head. The bullet passed through the tentacles and shot directly through the enemy's head, but Sadler did not fall. He stood and spoke as before, "Not bad, enough." Before he finished speaking, another gunshot rang out, and this gunshot hit Sadler's chest, and he fell down before he finished speaking. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. "What a weird thing," impatient Leon said, put away his weapon, and immediately ran to Ada. "Is Luo Guang okay?" Until now, Leon didn't believe that Luo Guang would be solved so easily. "I didn't see his figure, he has been swallowed by the sea." Ada's words were emotionless, and she didn't reveal her secret joy in her heart. There was one less person she couldn't deal with. Leon's face was full of sadness, but he quickly adjusted his mood. This was not the first time he encountered such a thing, and the mission had to continue. Now all he had to do was to send Ashley home safely, and he knew that Luo Guang had made arrangements in advance for Louis. Although Luo Guang was no longer there, he could only believe that Luo Guang's arrangements would not be cancelled because of his absence. "Ada, do you have someone to pick you up?" Leon thought of Luo Guang's guess. "We are going to evacuate here. You know we are not on the same path." "I can't go with you." Ada decided to wait until Leon and the others left before she called for the evacuation helicopter. Yeah, Leon was not interested and left here with sadness. He was going to tell Ashley and Louis the bad news. Ada looked at Leon, who was leaving, shook her head, and turned to walk towards Sadler's body. If she couldn't get Amber, it would be enough for her to get some cell samples from the parasites in the enemy's body. "Leon. You're back." Ashley, who was sitting on a tin box, jumped down to greet Leon, who came back. But Leon's face was not good. Ashley seemed to think of something and looked behind him. "Where's Luo Guang?" Louis asked a step faster than Ashley. Leon didn't answer, which made Ashley feel bad. He was hit by Sadler's attack and fell off the cliff. He was shattered to pieces. Even his body could not be found, Leon said, letting out his anger. "What?" Louis was very surprised. He could not imagine that Luo Guang had been slicing melons and vegetables all the way and solving various enemies, but ended up with such a slightly funny ending. "Woof woof," Xiaobai also cried. Ashley covered her mouth, her eyes widened, and her lips trembling slightly were about to speak when she heard the sound of communication from Leon. She didn't say it at the first time, and now she couldn't say it, so she had to turn her back to prevent others from seeing her tears. "This is the Eagle's Nest, the helicopter is coming soon. How are you?" Hannigan saw that Lion's face was not very good, but since the other party answered the communication so quickly, it seemed that there was no big problem. "We have completed the set goal, and we are now ready to go to the evacuation point. Also, Vulture number 2 has sacrificed himself." Leon told Hannigan what he saw. "What? Vulture 2 is dead?" Hannigan was surprised. In her sight, the location of Vulture 2 had just moved within the island. It did not move away from the island with the current or remain motionless. She was about to confirm whether Leon had made a mistake, and a hand was placed on Hannigan's shoulder. The owner of this hand was Simmons, and in his other hand he was holding a mobile phone that was in contact with Luo Guang. "Tell me." Simmons took the intercom and said, "This is Eagle Master. Vulture 2 is not dead. He just sent back a message." The sadness on Lion's face was instantly replaced by surprise. But I saw him fall off the cliff with my own eyes." He didn't report the specific situation, but he is indeed fine, and I have given him a new task, so he doesn't have to evacuate with you. After speaking, Simmons returned the intercom to Hannigan. Hannigan felt like he was riding a roller coaster. The ups and downs came too fast. He put on the communicator and said, "Vulture 1, you heard it too. Prepare to evacuate." Yes. Leon wiped his eyes and nodded. Louis, who was listening to the content of the communication, breathed a sigh of relief. If Luo Guang was not there, he suddenly didn't know whether to go according to the previously agreed arrangement. As for Xiaobai, when it heard what Leon said at the beginning, it immediately contacted Luo Guang through its perception ability. The two barks were actually telling others that Luo Guang was not dead, but no one could understand. Luo Guang naturally did not hide it from Xiaobai, but it was Xiaobai who made Luo Guang realize that he should tell Leon and the others. It's just that he is not suitable to contact Louis with the intercom now, so he secretly took a photo of Ada, and then explained that it was not convenient for him to contact Leon now, and ask Simmons to help. After receiving Luo Guang's reward, Simmons would not refuse this kind of effort. Instead, he felt that this was a good opportunity to win people's hearts. Ashley cried secretly, but her voice was not loud, so she still heard the good news from the communicator. Is Luo Guang really okay? The situation was so up and down that she didn't know which information was true for a while. Eagle Lord couldn't lie about such a thing, and Hannigan was also surprised at the beginning. It is very likely that she also saw Luo Guang was still active. Therefore, when Leon heard Ashley's question, he gave a definite answer: he should be fine. Until now, Leon has no doubt that the person who gave Luo Guang the task of capturing Aida was Simmons. Why didn't he contact us? One of the walkie-talkies is with him, right? Louis shook the walkie-talkie in his hand. Leon thought for a moment and said, it's probably related to the new mission, so it's not convenient to contact now. This chapter is not over yet. Please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Ashley breathed a sigh of relief, wiped away her tears, and said, don't tell Luo Guang that I cried. The two men looked at each other and shrugged. After waiting for about 10 minutes, the two helicopters appeared in the sight of Leon and others who had arrived at the evacuation point. The models of the two helicopters are the same. Hey, Vulture number 1, Mike is back. Mike greeted Leon. Hey, Mike, remember the bar? Leon replied. He really needed to relax, have a meal and drink some wine, and then have a good sleep. Finally, he had to deal with the Krauser relics that Luo Guang gave him in Louis's laboratory together with the dog tags of other brothers. Okay, I'll call some enthusiastic Spanish girls for you. Mike laughed. This evacuation point is large enough for two helicopters to land separately, but Mike and his team decided to take turns landing to pick up people. The other helicopter landed first, while Mike was on guard in the sky to ensure safety. Hello, I'm the person Luo Guang sent to pick you up. Do you have a lighter? Louis took out a cigarette and asked. The person in charge of the pickup had no problem. He took out the lighter and lit the cigarette for Louis and exchanged the secret code. Louis breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that Luo Guang's energy was greater than he expected, and he should be able to settle down. He lit the cigarette, but did not take a puff. He just stuck it in a hole in the ground. Aren't you going to take a puff? The contact person asked, which was also a secret code. I quit smoking. Louis exchanged the secret code and got on the plane with the contact person. Xiaobai also jumped on the helicopter. Huh? Xiaobai is following over there. Ashley's question was answered affirmatively by Leon. Hey, Don Quixote, we'll meet again if we're lucky. Leon knew that with his identity, he might never have the chance to meet him again. Luis put two fingers of his right hand together at his forehead and waved forward. Goodbye, Sancho. If we're lucky, we'll go on adventures together again. This kind of adventure, once is enough. The sound of the helicopter became louder and louder, and Leon shouted back. Goodbye, Luis. Ashley waved her arms and said goodbye to Luis. Luis, goodbye. Don't get kidnapped again, señorita. My name is Ashley, just like the first time they met. Ashley corrected the other person's name. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 293. Let's go home, 2. Ashley, Leon said to Ashley as he watched Louis' helicopter leave first. Do we really not have to wait for Luo Guang? Leon shook his head and said, no, that guy can directly communicate with my superior, and someone will come to pick him up later. Hey, that guy is really not loyal enough. He ran away directly. Mike directly used the loudspeaker on the helicopter to speak to Leon below. The person he was talking about was not Luo Guang, but the pilot of another helicopter. He was controlling the helicopter to land steadily while he was complaining. Okay, by the way, Leon, what are your plans next? Ashley suddenly said, Louis is right, I don't want to be kidnapped again, so I want to ask if you can be my bodyguard's woolen cloth. Sorry, I have other tasks to complete next. Leon has no time to stop. Fighting the biohazard is his most important thing now. Ashley was a little disappointed and asked again, what about Luo Guang? He is not an agent, and your bodyguard is rather special, so his identity does not meet the requirements. Leon was not stupid, and he vaguely knew what Ashley meant. She probably had a crush on Luo Guang, so he thought about whether they could have further contact and get to know each other, but he knew that Luo Guang had a girlfriend. Is it okay for me and my dad to just say no to this? If so, do you think Luo Guang will agree? Ashley asked with her cheeks flushed and her head slightly lowered. Leon thought over and over again and decided to tell Ashley the fact. Ashley, you are probably going to be disappointed. Luo Guang has a girlfriend. What? Ashley had been surprised so many times in just an hour, so she quickly adjusted. He actually has a girlfriend? Then why is he still so nice to me? Didn't he deliberately misunderstand me? Seeing that Luo Guang's reputation in Ashley seemed to be declining rapidly, Leon quickly explained, isn't this a gentlemanly behavior? He can't let you walk on those disgusting things, or let you jump off and land on your own, right? Ashley recalled the experience of contact between the two. It was true that when Luo Guang hugged her, he placed his hands properly and would not take the opportunity to touch her. Moreover, Luo Guang was indeed a gentleman in the village assembly hall. He walked to a place where he couldn't see himself, where he still couldn't feel the warmth of the fireplace. Thinking of this, Ashley's face became even more rosy. She was shy before, but now she is embarrassed. It turned out that she had been wrong all along, but... Leon, you are right. But I won't let it go. You also said that he just has a girlfriend. Ashley clenched her fists and encouraged herself. Although this is not something that Leon should get involved in, he also gave Ashley a vaccination. Ashley, I'm not trying to dampen your enthusiasm. It's just that Luo Guang and you live in different worlds, and there is a lot between you. It's hard to get results. What does it mean to be in a different world? Ashley didn't find Leon's words harsh, so she grabbed the key words and asked. Ashley, after you go back, you will probably continue to complete your studies at the university, right? Ashley replied, I don't know. After this happened, I don't know what my father will do. But she knew that no matter what, her life would change a lot. Even if she could go back to college, she would always have many bodyguards around her. Alas, it would be very difficult for your father to handle something like this. Leon comforted him and continued the previous topic, and Luo Guang should still be traveling around the world to carry out antibiochemical operations. Having said this, Leon thought of what Ada said. Luo Guang and her are doing the same thing. After a pause, he continued, so you and he basically don't have time to see each other. And his work is always available. Their lives are in danger, and your father will not agree to this. I didn't expect that he would say this to others one day. Ashley pouted and said, could his current girlfriend be able to do it? Although Leon and Jill had not met formally, he learned about it from Luo Guang and replied, his girlfriend has also been engaged in antibiochemical work, and like Luo Guang, she is a survivor of the Raccoon City incident. Hearing this, Ashley lowered her head and bit her lip reluctantly. She originally thought that her and Luo Guang's life and death experience would be an advantage for her, but Leon's short words made Ashley understand that she was too far behind. I didn't expect that my first heartbeat would be buried in my heart forever so soon. I regarded it as a wonderful memory, but after this day's baptism, Ashley didn't want to give up so quickly. After collecting the samples, Ada was hiding in the distance. After seeing Leon and the others leaving, she called her evacuation helicopter to come over, and then turned around and left the evacuation point of Leon and the others. Although the amber was lost, we still collected cell samples of special parasites. Thinking about it, this business should be stable, Ada said to herself. It's a pity that no explosives were found along the way, otherwise it would be blow up this place and monopolize the technology here. The Illuminati sect is very different from Umbrella. At least they will not install a self-destruction system in their hometown. What Ada said was not to allow the HCF organization to monopolize parasite technology. As anti-biochemical warriors, Leon and his team didn't need an explosion to end everything here. Wouldn't it be possible that the parasites here would be taken away by someone? So she was helping Leon and his team finish the job. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. Her helicopter had to stagger with Leon and his helicopter, and she had to pick herself up before the X organization's troops came, so she could only wait for the helicopter to come. Therefore, she first had to go to the Parasite Research Institute to get a freezer to ensure the activity of the samples in her hands. The other samples in the Parasite Research Institute were damaged by the high temperature, so Ada saved herself the trouble and didn't have to go to the trouble of cleaning up the parasite samples here. After that, she went back to the temple to find Lewis's laboratory to see if she could find more useful things, and also to find out if she could pick up her weapons that were shot down. Although she didn't like Wesker, the grappling gun that the other party gave her was still very much to her liking. As a result, neither her weapons that were shot down nor the useful information in Lewis's laboratory were found, and nothing was gained. Looking at the ashes in the brazier beside her, she knew that the paper materials should be gone. However, after digging deep into the ground, she still found a useful thing, which was a surgical machine used to remove parasites in the body. After copying the data in the surgical machine, Ada added fuel to the fire and set the laboratory on fire directly to ensure that others would not get any useful information here. After doing all this, the helicopter she organized was almost here. The helicopter landed, and in addition to Ada boarding the helicopter, a black figure quickly got under the chassis of the helicopter from the blind spot of the pilot and Ada's vision. The helicopter rose, Ada fastened the seat belts for herself and the freezer, put on the headset, and said to the helicopter pilot, "Help me connect." The pilot did not ask who to connect to. After operating the communication station for a while, he raised his hand and made an OK gesture. "Amber is gone, but I got the genetic sample from the leader, which is guaranteed to be fresh and usable." Well done. Although Ada failed to bring back Amber, it was enough for Wesker to stop the loss in time and find a replacement, and Ada would definitely collect some adult samples of Plaka parasites this time. Ada lowered her head slightly, looked at the rising sun slowly appearing on the sea level outside the helicopter, and asked, "What are you going to do with these?" After working as a corporate spy for so long, this was the first time she took the initiative to ask her employer such a question. "I don't pay you to ask questions," that's what she said, but Wesker continued, "You just need to know, a new dawn is coming." Ada leaned forward and listened carefully to the other party's words, making sure not to miss any details. At that time, only those who are qualified can survive, and those who are not qualified will have no choice but to die. So how many people will lose their lives? Millions of people? What about me? Ada added at the end, looking more like she was worried about her own life. Millions. Billions. As for you, who knows? Wesker did not give an accurate answer to whether Ada could survive. "Huh, you have a big appetite," Ada said, leaning back in her chair, and continued, "I met your life and death friend on the island." Wesker's calm tone, like the mastermind behind the scenes, was slightly turbulent. "You mean Chris?" "No, Luo Guang." "Yes, that guy is really tricky. Krauser should have been solved by him." Ada didn't think Leon could beat his instructor, especially Krauser, who was enhanced by parasites. Then what? He was knocked off the cliff by Sadler, and Amber was gone. "Did you see the body? Wesker is worthy of being a good brother and is most concerned about whether Luo Guang is dead." Ada replied calmly, "No, he fell into the sea." "That means he is still alive." Wesker put himself in Luo Guang's position and would not think that he would die because of this. But he didn't show up in the final battle afterwards. Ada therefore gave up one of her previous plans. That was to hold Ashley hostage in exchange for the amber in Luo Guang's hand. In Ada's opinion, Luo Guang would definitely agree to this deal. However, this plan should not be used if it can be avoided. Leon has grown a lot over the years and is no longer the kind of hot-blooded young man who believes everything he says. He should also be careful not to play the villain too much and lose his bottom line and principles. Impossible, Wesker was unwilling to believe that his nemesis would be defeated so easily. Now his greatest obsession is to defeat Luo Guang, which is the biggest obstacle on his way to becoming a god. That's right, Luo Guang turned over, kicked through the glass on one side of the helicopter cabin, and jumped into the helicopter. When he fell off the cliff, he directly made a parachute-like thing with hardened armor, reduced the descent speed, and then controlled the parachute to climb onto the cliff and then climbed up. Leon and the others, who were attracted by the cross-stalk of the three Sadlers, did not hear the slight sound made by Luo Guang when he was climbing. When Leon, Ada, and the others were able to safely go to the cliff to check the situation, Luo Guang had already returned to the Blackwater production plant. After confirming that Leon and the others were safe, he even made a detour to pick up a treasure he had been eyeing for a long time. Later, because Luo Guang had to follow Ada, he couldn't use the intercom to report his safety to Leon and the others, because he was worried that the slightest movement would make Ada, a cautious person, suspicious. Finally, he used the method of electromagnetism to attach himself to the bottom of the helicopter like a magnet, and evacuated with Ada and the others. Normally, Luo Guang couldn't hear the conversation between Ada and Wesker in the helicopter, but his watch came into play again, and he asked the Red Emperor, who was far away in the Caucasus, to help him crack the communication system on the helicopter and eavesdrop on the conversation. This chapter is not over yet. Please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. For the sake of safety, he asked the Red Emperor to invade the computer where Wesker was at the moment he appeared. Ada was full of thoughts and didn't react for a while, but the helicopter pilot sitting in front of her held the joystick calmly and didn't do anything that would make him regret. "Don't move." Luo Guang didn't take out a weapon to threaten Ada, but the pressure Ada felt from him didn't decrease because of this. This kind of intuition, similar to a woman's sixth sense, has saved her many times. Luo Guang picked up the headset from his seat and put it on, saying, "Good morning, Wesker, have you started exercising today? I got up early to do rock climbing exercises, and I left you behind again." Wesker and Luo Guang were talking from a distance, so he was not as flustered as if they were face to face. "While you were still busy running around to serve those dignitaries, I was able to develop dozens of new biochemical viruses," Luo Guang said in a relaxed tone, as if he was making an appointment with a friend to play ball. "Really? Then I'm curious about how much stronger you have become. When can we make an appointment to fight?" "There will be a chance. Then I will make you regret angering me." Wesker made a harsh statement, but he didn't dare to make an appointment with Luo Guang. "Ada, this amber is for you, and this box of things belongs to me." Luo Guang didn't care whether the other party agreed or not, and directly exchanged with the other party. What can Ada do? She can only hope that Luo Guang will execute the plan as Leon said. Wesker, who was far away in the sky, had no choice but to watch his chance to make further progress slip away. Cut off the communication. Luo Guang took out his gun and pointed it at the helicopter pilot, then told him a location, which was where Simmons asked Luo Guang to send Ada. Ada's pupils shrank slightly, and the gun in Luo Guang's hand was the pistol that had been knocked off her before, Blacktail. Luo Guang knew that Ada had lost her grappling gun when she was captured when he saw that she didn't have a grappling gun on her. When he and Ada were sitting together on the boat, he put tracking pheromones on her at that time, so he went to pick up Blacktail and the grappling gun first when he knew where she had been. Blacktail was incidental, and this grappling gun was what he wanted most. With a sample, he could mass-produce it later without worrying about losing it. With this weapon, he could use it to pull himself back directly when he fell off the cliff, and it could also slightly make up for his regret of not being able to fly and enhance his combat capability. It is one thing for the body to absorb various viruses and become stronger, and it is another thing to use various modern weapons and scientific tools. He will not make the same mistakes as Krauser and Sadler. Only by advancing both sides can he ensure his advantage. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 294. Wesker, who was at the HCF organization base, cursed angrily and asked his men to prepare a helicopter for him immediately. He was going to the location of the Church of Light. He could only pray that Krauser's body was still there, so that he could get what he wanted from the body. However, according to the plot of the original Resident Evil 4, Luo Guang had already crushed Krauser to ashes, and those parasites controlled by Sadler, such as villagers and cultists, also died because of Sadler's death, and there was no research value. This is a huge weakness of the parasite system. As long as the dominant Plaka parasite is beheaded, all the parasites under its command will die directly. As for the encounter and battle between Wesker and the special forces sent to the island by the X organization, let's not talk about it for now. But the first direct conflict between the X organization and the HCF organization deepened a hatred between the two organizations. Later, under the relentless pursuit of the X organization, Wesker's troubles officially began. Before Wesker, who had picked up the black cape, walked out of his office, his subordinates' voices came from the loudspeaker, "Our system has been hacked." At this point in time, he knew without thinking that it must be Luo Guang's doing, which made him unable to calm down and yelled in the room where he was alone. "Luo Guang, you damn guy." The helicopter flew back to the European continent. Luo Guang took out his mobile phone, took a photo of Ada and sent it to Simmons. This seemingly cumbersome and unnecessary thing is actually a way for Luo Guang to win Simmons' trust. Not to mention the attraction of Ada's close-up photo to Simmons, Luo Guang will report the work situation at the right time and let his superiors know what he is doing. It is easier to get the appreciation of his superiors than those who work silently. Especially this job is a private task that the boss attaches great importance to. The mission target has been captured. Received, go to the target location because of the matter of the president's daughter. Simmons hurried back to the lighthouse country to personally take charge of the overall situation after he explained the task to Luo Guang in Spain. So he couldn't personally go to meet Ada this time, but he was also prepared to prevent Ada from escaping like the last time, and ensured that Ada would wake up in the boudoir he specially prepared for her when she arrived at the target location. "Ada, do you have experience in jumping out of a plane?" "My assistant has already told me what you are going to do." Ada glanced at the helicopter pilot who was pointed at by Luo Guang. The pilot turned his head slightly and looked at Ada in the rear-view mirror. "Brother? Sister? Or someone else? Do you want me to shoot you and pretend it's a crash, or do you want to crash the helicopter yourself and escape?" The pilot did not reply, but answered with action. He first lowered the flight altitude and speed, then opened the door of the cockpit, and jumped directly to a big tree below without hesitation. This pilot was just a person hired by the HCF organization through channels, not a formal employee. The organization did not buy insurance for him, just a temporary transporter. He had survived several times when he was attacked and forced to land. Now he could do it easily and was used to it. Moreover, he was not loyal to the mysterious employer. After all, no matter how much money he had to live to spend it. The only pity was that this helicopter was his private property. "Come on and stay alive," Luo Guang said to Ada. Ada didn't like Luo Guang because of Simmons, but she didn't answer Luo Guang because of this. It was because the helicopter was hit by a joystick before the pilot jumped out of the helicopter, causing the helicopter to lose control while flying steadily. She had to quickly get the escape parachute and prepare to escape. Luo Guang also looked like he was afraid that the world would not be in chaos. He fired a few bullets at the helicopter control panel in the high-speed rotating helicopter. Simmons couldn't see what happened in the helicopter, but the helicopter locked by the radar suddenly dropped in altitude and then lost signal. This news soon reached his ears, and he immediately asked the people there to go to the crash site of the helicopter. At the same time, he also sent a message to Luo Guang, but Luo Guang naturally didn't reply to him immediately, and didn't take a picture of Ada's escape. Otherwise, he would have a hard time explaining why he didn't catch up with Ada this time. Luo Guang first opened the freezer in the crashed helicopter, then poured the contents into the burning fuel leaking from the helicopter, and then quickly found a place to bury the box. The main purpose of this mission was to capture Ada. Simmons would check the helicopter, but he would definitely not go to dig for treasures a few hundred meters around. Ada's departure was a top priority, and the other party would not ask about the amber. After all, except for the initial mention, he never mentioned that he got the amber. He had already prepared to pretend to be a wounded person. After handling the scene, he looked at the time again. Those who were originally on standby at the target location should be coming soon. So he found a big tree to cool off, leaned against the tree and waited for the rescue to come and carry him away. It was about the same time as Luo Guang expected. After the rescue came, they quickly split into 3 groups. One group ran to the traces of Ada's escape, one group took Luo Guang back to the evacuation point, and the rest of the group was investigating and handling the scene. However, Luo Guang only looked miserable on the outside. After examination, the doctor gave him a diagnosis of concussion. This disease is not a big deal, and it is definitely impossible to chase Ada. Simmons was very angry about this. First, he asked the people chasing Ada to speed up. They drove cars and took helicopters, and there was still a chance to catch Ada, who was running away on foot. Luo Guang had done his best for Ada, and it depended on the other party's luck. After receiving Simmons' call, he said the words he had prepared long ago, full of grievances, saying, "Originally, I had controlled the situation, but Ada still found a gap and broke free and escaped. Originally, it was just like this, I could still control Ada, but who would have thought that the helicopter pilot would jump out of the helicopter directly? Who can I go to for justice? Then the helicopter crashed, I was thrown out and hit my head, and then I couldn't stand steadily, so I couldn't catch up." Simmons was just angry because Ada ran away, and asking Luo Guang was just to understand the specific situation. Whether it was this time or last time, Luo Guang actually caught Ada. Last time, he was not optimistic about Ida, and this time, something went wrong before the handover with his own troops, so Simmons did not doubt Luo Guang because of this. Once there is a first, there will be a second. Simmons has now locked Ida in the HCF organization. Regardless of whether this organization is public or private, he must understand the situation clearly to prevent it from hindering the development of the X organization. So he is confident that he can find Ida's trace in the future. At the end of the conversation, he comforted Luo Guang and asked him to keep working hard next time. Seeing that Simmons did not continue to investigate, Luo Guang did not say much and was soon sent to a private hospital in the city. The medical level of this hospital is the best and most expensive in the local area. Many wealthy people from all over Spain will choose to come to this hospital for physical examinations or emergency medical treatment. Naturally, this hospital is the property of the X organization, and all the nurses and caregivers in it are actually spies specially trained by the X organization. A simple sentence from some wealthy people is enough for the X organization to analyze a lot of things, especially the kind of wills made before death. The X organization can often get first-hand information. But the fact that all the nurses and caregivers are spies leads to a problem. The family members of the X organization are also afraid of this, so they generally do not choose to go to this hospital. For Luo Guang, it doesn't matter if the nurses and caregivers are spies. It is still unknown who gets the information from whom. Simmons did not treat Luo Guang badly. He directly arranged the highest-end VIP service for Luo Guang, and all the expenses were reimbursed. The place where Luo Guang is lying and resting now is more like the presidential suite of the hotel. If it were not for some emergency medical equipment beside the bed, he would have suspected that this was not a ward. It can only be said that he does not understand the world of the rich. Is this treating the hospital as a hotel and not going home? His idea is right. There are really second-generation rich people who come to this place as a hotel and stay for a day or two, and this place does provide hotel services. The nurses here don't mind having something with those second-generation rich people, and for the second-generation rich people, these real nurses are more attractive than those socialites who play nurses. Because Luo Guang's actual injury is not serious, he doesn't even need a physical examination. He was discharged from the hospital after having fun here for a day. It wasn't that Luo Guang didn't want to stay a few more nights, and Simmons didn't mind the money, but after he slept all day, he received Kara's message early the next morning. As the chief researcher under Simmons, it was easy for Kara to get his contact number, and Luo Guang had to thank her for not coming to see him yesterday. Come over quickly when you have rested enough. Luo Guang would naturally not disobey the order of the young lady and flew back to Madrid. It wasn't that Kara didn't want to find Luo Guang yesterday, but she couldn't find the time. After a fight with Wesker, the X organization had taken over the village castle and the isolated island, and a large amount of researchable materials were sent here. She stayed up all night to sort out the various materials, and then arranged for her subordinates to conduct research. She was now mainly responsible for coordinating the entire project, rather than working hard directly, which was too inefficient. When Luo Guang came to her office, she was wearing 2 dark circles under her eyes and brewed a pot of instant coffee for herself at the coffee machine. She not only needed caffeine to refresh herself, but also sugar to supplement the brain with nutrients, so she added several spoons of sugar to the coffee. Have you used the medicine I gave you before? How effective is it? Kara asked about the AHM mixed medicine. I have used it, and it works very well. It can also detoxify. Luo Guang briefly described Leon's situation at the time. As for Louis's situation, he concealed it. Kara was not surprised by this result. She was not the kind of researcher who would take out a little bit of results to deceive investors. X organization also had no shortage of experimental subjects, so the AHM mixed medicine was the product of a large number of experiments. The remaining medicine is still with you, right? Give it back to me. Kara stretched out her hand. The production of green, red, and blue herbs in the Acre Mountains is limited. Even with the most advanced equipment of X organization, she has not yet completely analyzed the composition of these herbs. Therefore, this medicine has only been produced on a small scale and has not been officially launched. She has to take it back for other uses. It's with my companion. I didn't take it back. Kara didn't say to keep it well before, so Luo Guang said this with confidence. Kara stayed up all night yesterday. She was in a bad mood and was prone to irritability. But thanks to her rational thinking over the years, she finally held back her anger. It was not Luo Guang's words that made her angry, but the righteous tone that made her angry. She asked Luo Guang to come over. The main reason was not this matter, but another matter. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. Last night, she received the news that the mission to capture Ada failed, which reminded Kara of the last words Luo Guang said to her before the mission. You. But apart from work matters, she rarely communicated with others, so she didn't know how to start, and could only use the previous things as a starting point. After the starting point, she still couldn't lead the topic to what she really wanted to ask. Although Luo Guang guessed what the other party would ask when he came over, he would definitely not take the initiative to say it out and make it clear. Seeing Kara who didn't know how to start, Luo Guang waited for a while and said, "If the chief researcher has nothing else to do, I will leave first." Kara was interrupted by Luo Guang's words while thinking, and looked up and said, "Wait." She decided to follow her own personality. That kind of roundabout way of speaking was not in line with her style. "Did you let that woman go on purpose?" "I have already reported this to the leader." The subtext of this was that if he did it on purpose, Simmons would have taken him down long ago. But Kara didn't understand this, and thought Luo Guang wanted her to ask Simmons directly, "Why? Can't you report to me? Although we are in different departments, I am several levels higher than you in terms of position." Luo Guang knew that the other party had misunderstood as soon as he heard it, and sighed and said, "If I let it go on purpose, do you think I can still stand here?" The leader has confirmed the situation. This is obviously very simple to infer, but Kara didn't think of this at the first time, maybe because of fatigue, or maybe just because of confusion. "What do you mean by what you said before leaving here?" Kara asked. Luo Guang was not sure if there were any surveillance equipment here, and replied, "It's meaningless, I just said it casually." Kara is not as calm as when they first met, so Luo Guang finally thought it would be better not to say those things. It would be best if he could make some money when her love for Simmons disappeared, so that his research team could have another big boss. Kara at this time could not tolerate others saying anything bad about Simmons, and would not give up putting her admiration on Simmons, so Luo Guang's persuasion of Kara was just talking to a cow. Although Kara's brain was not very clear because of sleepiness, she also knew that this was the other party's excuse, but she did not ask any more questions, but told the other party to get out. After Luo Guang left, she poured herself a cup of coffee and took a sip. "It's cold." As she said, she poured out all the coffee and brewed a new pot. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 295. Just as the Church of Light began to fall, other parts of the world were not so peaceful and nothing happened. Another biochemical crisis has quietly erupted. There is a black island called Smoke Island on the north of the east coast of the Lighthouse country. The island is inhabited. After years of planning, it has become the size of a small town with 2,000 to 3,000 permanent residents, making a living from fishing and tourism. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. The land and rocks on the island are all black and rich in nutrients, but because the terrain is not flat, this place does not grow food, but mainly flowers. The reason why it is called Smoke Island is not because there is a volcano on the island that emits thick smoke all year round, but the name is derived from the transliteration of the name given by the Aborigines on the island, and then it has been used by immigrants. As for why it is called this name, no one has investigated it. Just like the question of why none of the indigenous people on the island survived, no one would care except those who study history. There have been earthquake records on this island, but there have never been any problems like this time, let alone a biochemical crisis. Carlos looked at the information given to them by the employer and said to himself, that means it is very likely that this is man-made. The employer of the GIMZ team for this mission is the Lighthouse government, which cannot be refused. Therefore, Hank has no time to wait for his boss's reply and can only agree to the other party's employment first. Why did the lighthouse government find GIMZ? We have to talk about another anti-biochemical organization involved in this biochemical crisis, FBC. FBC is an anti-biochemical organization led by Morgan Lansdale. As the world's largest official anti-biochemical organization, it has more abundant financial support and more professionals than BSAA. Normally, FBC can deal with this biochemical crisis. But the original Red Claws were absorbed by the FBC, which is a traditional military force, so no one from the X organization participated in this biochemical crisis. Based on the idea that if I don't have a good life, I can't let you have a good life, the X organization proposed to let more anti-biochemical organizations join in and supervise each other, so as not to let the FBC dominate and control all the affairs of this biochemical crisis. In short, with the intervention of the X organization, the Lighthouse Nation played a game of power balance in this biochemical crisis. Anyway, it has to be balanced, and the president of the Lighthouse Nation was not polite and directly called the GIMZ and BSAA troops. This biochemical crisis occurred in two places. In addition to the Smoky Island, it was the coastal city of Portland closest to the island. Morgan naturally knew what the Lighthouse government meant, but the devil was always stronger than the good. He also had his own way of dealing with it, which was to send both GIMZ and BSAA to Smoke Island, a place that he thought was insignificant. The two sides would not interfere with each other, so that the influence of the other side's forces could be minimized. This biochemical crisis was Morgan's first battle to establish the reputation of the FBC organization. He could not afford to lose and could not allow others to come and compete for the credit. So the result was that GIMZ and BSAA were responsible for the biochemical crisis on Smoke Island, while FBC was responsible for Portland, the city closest to Smoke Island on the East Coast, a larger biochemical crisis area. The leader of the BSAA team on this mission was Chris Redfield. After training in the American branch of the BSAA, in addition to his muscles, he also learned to think more instead of picking up weapons and solving biochemical crises directly. Chris, who walked into the hangar where Carlos and his team were, just happened to hear Carlos' last words. "What a coincidence. I also think it is very likely to be man-made, but I don't know which company's research institute will leak." For this mission, Chris did not bring any other men with him except Steve. Because the others were still undergoing anti-biochemical training, for the sake of safety, he did not let those who had no experience in biochemical crisis come in this biochemical crisis where the situation was not clear. The unclear here refers to the unknown cause of the incident, whether it is related to some biochemical terrorist organizations, and the unknown transmission route, etc. Carlos, as the representative of GIMZ, immediately stood up to greet them and said, "It seems that we think alike." "Hello, I'm Carlos from GIMZ." The two shook hands. Chris saw the combat backpacks that had been packed on the long table in front of Carlos and the others, and said, "I'm Chris, and that's Steve over there. Sorry, we're late. Have you finished your preparations?" Chris's main weapon was the same as Carlos's, both of which were M4 series assault rifles, but Carlos's was equipped with a silencer and an underslung grenade launcher, while Chris's barrel was slightly shorter. Steve, who was following behind the brother-in-law, brought an M870 shotgun. This was because he had the habit of slinging bullets, so Chris was using a pump-action shotgun to correct his bad habit. "We've just been getting ready, and you came at the right time." After all, BSAA had investment from the United States, and many resources were in place, so the Lighthouse government was very stingy and did not prepare transportation, weapons, and ammunition for them. In order to save money, GIMZ asked BSAA if they could use the helicopter to set off together. Chris had no problem with this, and it was a good opportunity for him to get to know the GIMZ side. This chapter is not over. Please click on the next page to continue reading. There were more people on Carlos' side, so he introduced them to Chris one by one. Sherry was the only medic on both teams, so Carlos introduced her first. Sherry Crow, the medic in the team, is the treasure of our unit. The weapons Sherry carried this time were .45 submachine guns and G21 pistols that both used .45 ACP pistol bullets. This is because the .45 pistol bullet itself is a very good subsonic bullet. When used with a silencer, it can effectively reduce the sound of the gun. In urban battles, at least no gunshots will be fired, and everyone in the town will hear the dinner bell. Pold Camus, the demon. Pold did not carry heavy firepower weapons this time, because although the firepower of light and heavy machine guns was fierce, their power was excessive, and the sound of firing was loud. Carrying it for a long time required more physical strength, and overall the gain outweighed the gain. Therefore, he chose the same .45 and G21 as Sherry. The freed-up weight also allowed him to carry more incendiary grenades and fragmentation grenades to deal with possible difficult monsters. Sniper Daria Hawk. Daria is not using her ancestral SVD semi-automatic sniper rifle, but the VSS Vintores sniper rifle. This is also a weapon with a smaller sound, but it carries special bullets, so she also carries a G17 pistol that uses 9mm bullets. Because 9mm bullets are lighter in weight and can be easily obtained locally in lighthouse countries. Chris nodded to the members of the Angel team one by one. Your team should all wear silencers. It's better to be quiet when fighting in towns, Carlos replied. Steve nodded seriously. Those zombies basically had better hearing than eyesight, so he agreed very much. In order to be able to be with Claire, he is now a good boy who loves to study, but he has not been able to change his impatience unique to young people, so Chris takes him with him to slowly polish him. After all, BSAA is a force that needs to be stationed in the lighthouse country for a long time, so the lighthouse country does not allow BSAA troops to equip silencers, and GIMZ will leave after completing its mission, but it does not have to be bound by this reason. Intelligence has always been something Luo Guang pays attention to. People in the G.IM.Z force are basically very familiar with the main members of other antibiochemical organizations, so Carlos knows Chris's experience very well and said, "Hey, Chris, you were from the STARS team." Chris nodded. This matter is not a secret, many people know his resume. Then you should know Jill Valentine, right? I was also in Raccoon City and escaped with her. Carlos naturally asked this for a reason, as it can bring the relationship closer between the two parties. After all, they will fight together later. Chris is observing Carlos and the others, and Carlos is also observing Chris and the others. Chris raised his eyebrows and said, "Are you a survivor of Raccoon City? No wonder you are the captain of this team." Everyone else in the team looked older than Carlos, but the youngest person was the captain, which also confirmed that Carlos was not lying. Carlos wanted to say something more, but Chris received a message from the helicopter pilot, saying, "Without further ado, the helicopter has been refueled, let's go now." Copy that. Carlos called to the rest of his men and followed Chris. The B.S.A.S helicopter was waiting outside the hangar. They no longer chatted, but were aligning the time, confirming the common communication channel and action plan, etc. Chris's departure signal indicated that it was already working time for them. As the representative of his own side, Carlos couldn't take the lead in gossiping and leaving a good impression on the other party. "We see the island, we will land on the other side of the mountain. Check the equipment." After all, BSAA has an official background, so the captain of this mission is Chris. After confirming the topography of the island, he decided to rappel from the other side of the island and then cross the ridge to the town. Everyone put on gas masks with communication functions, and then began the final test. "This is Chris. Please answer." Copy that. Everyone reported their names one by one. Everyone, we have reached the target area. The helicopter pilot joined the chat channel after everyone reported their names. Chris immediately dropped the rope and began rappelling. After landing, everyone immediately dispersed into a circular formation, each guarding a direction. Safe after everyone reported, Chris took out an air monitor developed by BSAA, which can confirm whether there are any unknown bacteria or viruses in the air. There was no abnormality in the air monitor, but Chris did not immediately give the order to take off the gas mask. Instead, he began to lead the team after confirming the direction of Smoke Island Town. They did not encounter any abnormal creatures along the way, and the forest was eerily quiet. The unusual silence made Steve, the youngest in the team, feel a little irritable. But soon, they came to the bulge in the center of the island and saw a small house hidden in the forest. This made Chris feel uneasy immediately. The incident in the mansion in the Arklay Mountains also left a deep impression on him, but it was not as deep as Jill's PTSD symptoms. Carlos and I will go to scout first, and the others will cover us outside. Chris immediately gave the order. This kind of house is not the more people exploring, the better. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Received. Carlos did not exchange weapons with Shwerui and the others, and directly followed Chris's pace with the M401 assault rifle. Although it was dark, the moonlight was bright. They did not turn on the tactical flashlight on the Picatinny rail and touched the main door of the small house, which was a common double door. Durance Chris saw the nameplate next to the door, which seemed to be the name of this family. There is no doorbell, what should I do? Go in, Carlos asked in a low voice. Chris knew that Carlos was just being cautious, but he had his own principles. We are not robbers. He first signaled Carlos to cover him, and then knocked on the door vigorously. Is anyone home? No one answered, and Chris knocked the door directly. Carlos, who was covering behind Chris, frowned. This was not a good sign. Chris gently pushed open one side of the double door. There was no light inside, so he quickly pressed the switch of the tactical flashlight. Through the instantaneous light, he confirmed part of the situation in the house. There was no body inside, but he noticed the unusual black liquid on the floor. There is something going on, be careful, Chris said, and made a gesture to prepare to go in. Carlos came behind Chris, patted his shoulder, and told him that he was in place. Then the two quickly entered. As soon as Chris entered, he moved to the left and aimed, so that Carlos could quickly ensure the safety of the right side for him. They did not search separately on the left and right, but first called the people outside to come and guard the door. Following the black liquid on the ground, Chris and Carlos came to the second floor and heard a series of snapping sounds from the depths of the corridor, mixed with some biting and roaring sounds. Carlos was familiar with any of these sounds, but the mixture at this time was not normal. The sound only came from the innermost part, but they still carefully ensured that there was no problem with the rooms they passed by, and finally came to the deepest room. The door was ajar. There was no light inside, but there was a window. As a forward, Chris saw a shocking scene through the moonlight. Without exception, the three people had black liquid flowing out of their wounds, and the black liquid flowing out of their eye sockets was like tears. Their expressions were not as dull as those of ordinary zombies, but full of pain. Carlos passed Chris and saw this scene. His first thought was to change his eyes. Chris resisted the nausea, pointed the gun at the three people, pushed the door with his arm, and walked in. There was a click. It was the floor here that had been in disrepair for a long time and was cracked by Chris, making a noise. The three Durance family members stopped and looked at Chris at the same time. Put your hands up, he would shout this sentence whether he was discovered or not, even if he had no hope in his heart. The only response he got was the zombie-like roar and the bloody mouth. Before the three Durances could bite him, Chris directly ended their pain with 3 accurate shots. Because Chris was blocking the door, Carlos did not shoot. After the other party dealt with the enemy, he slowly asked, "They should be zombies, right?" Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 296. Chris was not unfamiliar with the word zombie, but he felt that the three people in front of him seemed different from any he had seen before. But zombies won't do such shameful things. This was the biggest doubt in Chris's mind. Don't talk about this anymore. I feel sick just thinking about the scene just now. Carlos smiled bitterly and continued, but no matter what, this villa is in such a remote place, and the people inside are infected. I don't think the situation in the town will be too good. Chris had been mentally prepared for a long time. Before each biohazard mission, he expected that he would see the hellish scene again. He nodded in agreement with Carlos, and then called Steve to come up and collect samples through the radio. This is also a process for BSAA to deal with biohazards. The purpose is to study vaccines or serums. After all, no one dares to guarantee that the same biohazard will not happen again in the future. Steve learned a lot of knowledge when he worked with Claire Intidrilla before, so this kind of blood sampling work is naturally not difficult for him. Why is this man? Steve, who is already an adult, looked at the man without pants and asked. Don't ask. I don't want to recall that scene. Carlos interrupted directly. After everyone confirmed that there were no survivors and no secret rooms in the villa, they gathered in front of the villa. The intelligence of the lighthouse country did not mention these situations, Steve said dissatisfiedly after exchanging intelligence. Chris reported the intelligence in the villa to the server of BSAA, and the people in the American branch would then share this information with the lighthouse country, and then said, "There is no way." The military blocked the crisis area and did not send anyone to investigate. As for the FBC who conducted the investigation first, they will definitely not share the information with us. Those people are still hoping that we will all die here. Pold took over Chris's words. Damsey guess, Steve cursed angrily. Okay, you're still young. You'll get used to these shits in a few years. Carlos, who was in his 20s, pretended to be mature, and then turned to Chris and said, "Are you done?" "Okay, let's go on." Chris put away the report machine and preached to Steve, "Don't say those things that are easy to be caught by others." He didn't say this because he didn't trust Carlos and the others, but he was just teaching Steve to do things and not repeat the mistakes he made in Raccoon City. Got it? Steve's tone was a little impatient. Chris's words were not wrong, and he was still his future brother-in-law in his heart, so he wouldn't refute it, but he was not used to this preaching tone. In addition, he was smart and decided to use pronouns to refer to those bastards in the future. After moving forward for a while, they suddenly heard a crisp gunshot in the forest. Carlos and Chris exchanged glances, quickened their pace, and soon saw the fire not far away. Giving a gesture, Chris asked everyone to surround them. "Taylor, are you okay?" Taylor pushed his girlfriend's arm away, ran to the other side, knelt on the ground and vomited. When he calmed down a little, he looked up and saw a man standing not far away, aiming a gun at him. "Don't shoot. I'm defending myself." "I don't want to kill him," Taylor, who raised his hands in surrender, shouted in a cold sweat. Clang. Taylor heard the sound of something falling behind him. Looking back, his girlfriend had raised her hands and made a gesture of surrender, and the baseball bat was thrown directly to the ground by her. There is a Winchester M70 shotgun at the man's feet, and the woman is holding a baseball bat. She looks like a civilian trying to survive. It is not unbelievable that there are guns in this country. Carlos judged their identities by their attire and the way Taylor vomited. Chris came forward and said, "We are BSAA, the United Nations Bioterrorism Defense and Assessment Alliance. Are you all right?" After he finished speaking, Carlos did not reveal his GIMZ identity. Because the name of the United Nations official organization is always easier for civilians to accept than his own mercenary name. The girl's name is Sue, and she replied, "We are fine." Taylor just killed his teacher. But we didn't kill him intentionally. It was Abraham who suddenly jumped over, and he killed the man over there with a shovel before, and even ate his internal organs. It was Taylor who fired the gun, but before that Sue also hit Abraham's head with a baseball bat. After hearing Sue's description, Taylor's nausea, which had just eased, came back again, and this time he vomited gastric juice. We received news that there was a biochemical crisis here, so the Lighthouse Nation sent us here to understand the situation. Chris gestured to let everyone except Carlos to be on guard around, and then asked Sue, who was in a better mental state, about the situation. First, can you tell us what you know? Sue shook her head. She didn't know what happened here. It was fine during the day, but a biohazard occurred in the middle of the night. The reason why Taylor's teacher Abraham changed his temperament, was full of aggressive desire and ate human bodies, was probably because he turned into a zombie. After the matter was explained reasonably, she calmed down quickly. Carlos recalled the information given by his employer and planned to ask from the only clue, did anything happen after the earthquake? That's not an earthquake, it's a volcanic eruption. No, it's not a volcanic eruption either. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Sue recalled what they saw after they were woken up by the earthquake in the middle of the night. There's no need to worry about whether it's an earthquake or a volcanic eruption. Just tell us what you saw. Okay. Sue took a deep breath, sorted it out and said, anyway, a violent vibration woke us up. Then we looked out through the window and found a large cloud of black smoke spewing out from the bulge in the center of the island, and then headed towards the town. Direction. Sue, let me talk next. Taylor was a local and was more familiar with this place. After wiping his mouth with his sleeve, he stood up and said, I thought the volcano was about to erupt, so I planned to take Suda back to the city for refuge. Then we passed by Abraham teacher's archaeological dig camp. Abraham is my junior high school history teacher, and he is here to study the history of the island. But when we came here, we saw him using a shovel to dig into the belly of the Durrance family lunatic until he was cut off at the waist. In order to stop him, we tried to scare him with a gun, but he was not afraid at all. Instead, he turned and pounced on me. In desperation, Sue hit him on the head with a bat. Later, during the fight, I accidentally buckled the ball. Trigger him. He said this clearly to show that he was acting in self-defense. Okay, you don't need to say anything more, Chris interrupted. It was not an easy thing to shoot someone he knew, whether it was an accident or not. They are not judges, and it is not their decision whether Taylor will be convicted of self-defense in the end. Moreover, he had met the Durrance family before and knew that what Taylor said might be true. So Chris is not like the lighthouse police in some movies who just think the other person is talking nonsense and then lock him up as a bad guy. Now they know that poor Mr. Abraham seems to be in the same situation as the Durrance family, indicating that this is not a hereditary disease in the family. Carlos interrupted and asked, is there a pharmaceutical company or chemical plant on your island? Although he didn't know why the other party asked this, Taylor, who grew up on a small island, answered truthfully, no. Then he asked with a bit of anger, are you saying someone deliberately put a virus here or something like that? Resident Evil propaganda has been going on since the Umbrella trial, so Taylor quickly thought of that aspect. That's why we're here, to investigate the truth about the biohazard. Carlos continued to ask in detail, by the way, does the name Smoke Island come from the black smoke your girlfriend mentioned? Have you ever inhaled that black smoke? This archaeological camp is located between the center of the island and the town, and should be within the range of the black smoke. Chris, who was listening on the sidelines, understood that Carlos suspected that there was something wrong with the black smoke, so he took out the air monitor to check, but it still showed that there was no problem with the air. Our vacation cabin is on the north side of the island and has not been affected by the black smoke. As for the name of the island, I don't know much about it. At this time, Taylor only regretted that he had no talent for learning. Abraham had given him a make-up lesson on the history of the island half a day ago, but as a result, he, a local, could not answer the other party's questions. But his girlfriend Sue is a top academic and happens to be majoring in history, so she still remembers what Abraham said. I remember. He said that this smoke island is not like other places where you can dig up mysterious texts or strange cultural relics. You can only dig up a lot of corpses. Regardless of whether they were men, women, children, or animals in the forest, they were all buried together, and according to research, it was found that most of these corpses had been dismembered and raped. Hearing what Sue said, Carlos and Chris both recalled what they saw in the Durance family bungalow, and it seemed to correspond to them. According to Abraham, these things were not done by the colonists who landed on the island later. When they came to the island, there were no living people. The reason was a civil war among the island's indigenous people, and the colonists who landed on the island just buried them together. Didn't people at that time settle down without further investigation? Carlos asked. Taylor also recalled it and shook his head. At least it was not mentioned in the town's chronicle. It was teacher Abraham who excavated and found the remaining records and then speculated. Has this black smoke appeared again since then? My family has been on the island for generations and I haven't heard any of these stories from them. Taylor could only answer Chris' question sideways. Chris and Carlos nodded simultaneously. If there are no clues or evidence that other biohazards are man-made, this biohazard may be a natural disaster. They were not surprised by this, because Umbrella's T-virus was extracted and improved from an ancient virus. Chris thanked them for their intelligence and took out his satellite phone to contact the branch's command center. This is Chris, help me contact the Lighthouse Country and ask them to use satellites to check whether the movement of the black smoke that appeared after the Smoke Island earthquake has affected Portland. Yes, according to the clues we found, the source of this residential evil incident may be the smoke. As he said this, he told the command center the intelligence he had collected one by one and recorded it. Unlike the previous upload by SMS, the reason he called this time was because there was a lot of content to report, so in order to prevent omissions, he explained the situation to the command center in front of everyone. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading, so that others can correct it in time. After the contact person wrote down the key points, according to Chris's request before departure, he took the initiative to tell him the new intelligence received. Boss, the FBC is carrying out a rescue operation, but I heard that the situation is not good. Something went wrong when evacuating the city residents, and the scale of infection has expanded to most of the city. Fortunately, the military gave them a bottom line and supported them in time, otherwise the whole city would fall, and even the blockade would be broken. Damn. What the hell are those people doing? Chris was not happy because the FBC was defeated. The contact person did not answer, and continued in a business-like manner. Also, the latest intelligence shared by the FBC mentioned that the transmission route of zombies is body fluids, which is the black stuff on the zombies. The BSAA submitted useful intelligence, which made the FBC dare not keep it secret, and also shared some information that Chris and others would know sooner or later. Got it, over. Chris hung up the phone, then took out the map and said to Taylor and the others, "You two, go to this place and wait for us to come back." "What about you?" Taylor was a little anxious, his parents and pet dog were in the town. Chris answered patiently, "We are going to the town to search for survivors and free those who have become zombies. Can you take me with you? Although I am in college in another city, the town has basically not changed much. I am still very familiar with it and can lead the way for you." Sure enough, when Carlos knew that Taylor was a local, he knew that the other party would most likely make this request. "Taylor, what should I do?" Sue grabbed Taylor's hand and asked directly. Taylor shook his lips and said, "Sue, it will be very dangerous next. You should go back to the cabin and wait for me to come back. Don't leave me alone. I'm scared, Sue begged. Sorry, my parents are still in that city. Taylor was shaken, but still did not change his decision. Hey, you two, we didn't say we would take any of you on the road. Carlos interrupted the two. Chris nodded and said in a gentler tone, sorry, you two. For your safety, I suggest you better follow our advice. Hey. Are you asking me to give up saving my parents? Taylor was very dissatisfied and emotional. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 297. Faced with Taylor's dissatisfaction and anger, Carlos chose to accept it calmly. Because the other party did nothing wrong, but they also have their own tasks and responsibilities. So he said in a very serious tone, we are not your babysitter. If you want to save your parents, we will not stop you. But don't think of any crooked ideas to let us save your parents first, unless you can give us evidence that your parents are still alive. Before, he only said that he was familiar with the road and could lead the way, but now it immediately became saving parents. Besides, there are no messy places such as pharmaceutical companies and chemical plants here, so there is no need for them to find someone to lead the way for this mission, unless there are survivors sending out a distress signal. Besides, they also have intelligence support and satellite positioning in the rear, so it is not a troublesome thing to find the way. So Carlos, who has been working in the old oil pile for many years, can see through Taylor's little thoughts, a college student who has not yet entered the society. And he knows that Chris is kind, so he intends to make himself the bad guy. What? Where can I find evidence for you? You can only go and see it with your own eyes. Chris felt that Carlos' words were a bit unkind, and there were obviously better ways to say it. But unless there is evidence that his parents are still alive, their rescue targets are equal, which is fair to all survivors. Carlos can also understand Taylor's anger, but he has to be responsible for his team members. He learned a lot of knowledge about leading a team from the class how to solve the problem of killing teammates, taught by his boss, so he knew a lot of cases of team annihilation. Among them, there are cases where the team suffered casualties because civilians did not obey orders or civilians broke the silence in order to save their families. It's not that he dislikes civilians, but he sees that Taylor is a little dishonest and has a lot of emotional fluctuations. On the contrary, Sue, who has been holding her boyfriend's arm, Carlos thinks she will be calmer when encountering things, and it is at least safer to take her with her than with Taylor. It's better to say that he doesn't want to help Taylor find his parents first than to say that he doesn't want to take him with him. Taylor is a member of the college football team and is easily irritable, so it is normal for Sue to be calmer when encountering things. Of course, this is also because this is Taylor's hometown, and he just killed his former teacher, which makes it difficult for him to calm down. Hey, Taylor, call your parents. Sue immediately thought of a way. Yes. Taylor, who was originally angry because of Carlos' words, was awakened by Sue, and hurriedly took out his mobile phone and was about to call his parents. But Chris directly pressed the phone with one hand. Those zombies will be attracted by the sound. If your parents are fine, but the phone rings at your house, it will be troublesome. Tell us your home address. But don't hold too much hope. He proposed a more win-win method, and Carlos did not express any objection to it. But Taylor no longer believes Chris and others, and feels that the other party will not really go directly to his parents. He did not notice that the logos on Chris and Carlos' armbands are different, and they are two groups of people. Ever since he shot and killed his teacher with his own hands, Taylor's nerves have been tense, and now he is eager to save people and he explodes directly. This won't work, and that won't work. I don't need your help. If you don't go, I'll go by myself. Taylor took his shotgun and ran towards the town without caring about his girlfriend. Wait. Taylor, Sue wanted to persuade Taylor, but her boyfriend walked too fast, so she hurried after him. Carlos, you don't have to do that. We are here to save people, not to force them to face a biohazard. Chris wanted to catch up with Taylor, but was stopped by Carlos, who turned his head and said angrily. Carlos looked directly into the other's eyes and replied, "They should not and are not suitable to follow our team. This is responsible for our teammates. They should listen to our instructions and wait for us directly at the evacuation point. This is responsible for their lives." But he made the worst choice. You can talk to him directly and find a better way to go around. Chris's tone softened. He knew in his heart that Carlos was right, but he just didn't agree with the other's approach. If it weren't for Carlos, even if he knew it was not good, he might have agreed to Taylor's request because of a moment of weakness. If Carlos was still the Raccoon City incident, he might have said it in a roundabout way and tried to save everyone. But he couldn't do it now, because he was now the captain of the Angel Squad. In this position, he finally understood how heavy the responsibility was that Michael Victor, the captain of the UBCS, had always led the team forward. In the earlier guerrilla period, what kind of mood did his captain have when he issued the cold and ruthless order to abandon the wounded? Chris, you know that in such a high-pressure situation, many people can't stay calm. Not to mention that the guy just killed someone he knew, and his family is here. We are carrying a time bomb with him. Carlos continued. And if the black smoke is really the source of this biochemical crisis, how many defenseless town residents do you think can survive? In this case, if we fail to save his parents in the end, he will only resent us. Biological and chemical viruses that can be transmitted through the air have always been the most difficult to deal with. Ordinary rooms cannot block the pervasive air. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. Except for Steve, the other teammates listened to the conversation between Carlos and Chris and remained silent. But we can't just stand by and watch them die. Steve, who was more focused on the present, said, "Taylor and Sue are the survivors." Chris nodded and looked at Carlos. "Why are you looking at me? I didn't say to watch them die. I didn't refute the compromise you mentioned before." Carlos replied that he just didn't want to go on the road with a time bomb. It's not that they ignore the lives of the survivors. They had already told them to go to the designated evacuation point, but the other party didn't want to go. Carlos and the others couldn't knock them out and carry them away. Put aside the plot of helping others and respect the fate of others was a summary of his boss in class. Then let's go. Chris understood that Carlos had his own considerations, so he didn't argue anymore and gave the order. "Hey, Taylor, wait for me," Sue chased after Taylor and shouted. Taylor ran ahead angrily, "Aren't they here to rescue? Why did they just watch someone die?" Sue didn't say much, but she didn't agree with her boyfriend, because in the end it was Taylor who didn't trust him and ran away on his own. She actually heard that the other party was not unwilling to save people, but just because Taylor was still alive, he couldn't give priority to saving his parents, which was unfair to other survivors. Even the other party's leader finally proposed a compromise plan. She thought the best plan should be to exchange communication methods, and then she and Taylor would go to his parents to confirm that they were still alive and stay at home, and at the same time contact BSAA to rescue them and others from the town and send them to a safe place. But it's useless to say anything now. She knows Taylor, and her angry boyfriend won't listen to persuasion. What is this? Taylor ran out of the forest and looked at the town in front of him, stunned. The originally peaceful town was filled with smoke. A car overturned and hit a street lamp post. The people inside had already lost consciousness. But they saw 3 townspeople staggering past the car and turning a blind eye to the injured. This was not the friendly and harmonious town with harmonious neighbors that Taylor had in mind. "Hey, you three," Taylor made a trumpet shape with his hands in front of his mouth and shouted, "Go and save people." But the three townspeople did not respond to him, as if they did not hear Taylor's words. "Taylor, they are not right," Sue, who caught up, wanted to grab Taylor, who was about to approach them. But he still didn't catch up, so he could only follow Taylor and slide down the slope. "Cold, hungry, cold. Hey, Sue." "Zombies can't speak." Taylor heard the words in the other's mouth, and he was happy and turned his head to Sue. But Sue did not show any joy, but had a bad premonition in his heart. The two walked up to the three people together. When the flashlight shone on the three people, they saw the same appearance as Abraham, with black liquid flowing out of their eye sockets, mouth corners, nostrils, and ears. "Jack, Otis, Diego, you." Taylor muttered the names of the three people, and his body took a step back because of fear. The original anger disappeared because of the misunderstanding that the three people were fine. As a result, in the blink of an eye, fear and sadness directly surged into Taylor's heart and stimulated his emotions. The town resident named Dios in the middle looked at Taylor with his dark eyes, raised his hands, and was the first to pounce on Taylor. Unlike the T-virus zombies, the other two zombies did not attack immediately after hearing the sound. "Taylor, shoot," Sue, who was hiding behind her boyfriend, shouted the first reaction. "I." Taylor leaned back, with an uncomfortable expression on his face, trembling and raising the gun, but failed to press the trigger. The voice of Otis's shouting became louder and louder. Hungry, with a roar, he pounced on Taylor. In order to block the guy who was pressing on him, Taylor threw his gun to the ground and held his hands tightly on the guy's shoulders. Hungry. When Otis exerted force and was about to bite Taylor, Sue took the bat and hit Otis' head directly with a home run. With the help of her boyfriend's force, she finally knocked Otis aside. "Let's go." Sue didn't want to fight the other party to death here, so she pulled Taylor up. Taylor got up quickly and didn't forget to take his shotgun. "I'll lead the way." Taylor was familiar with the road, passed Sue, and ran in front. While looking back to confirm whether Sue had caught up with him, he was also confirming whether the three zombies were chasing him. The three zombies didn't chase him as he expected. Jack and Diego in his mouth were kneeling beside Dios, who was hit hard on the head, and lowered their heads to bite each other. Taylor immediately turned his head and looked away, without saying a word or thinking, and continued to run home with Sue. "I didn't see them." Sniper Daria quickly gave the result after observing. Chris and others also came to the edge of the town. After confirming that Taylor and Sue were not there, they did not rush into the town. Captain Daria saw the trio that Taylor had met before and said, "The two zombies over there are eating the zombies on the ground. The one that fell to the ground has a dent on its head, which may have been caused by a baseball bat." There was one more thing she didn't say. After one of the zombies swallowed a few bites of meat, he turned around and started to take off the pants of the one who fell to the ground. "Get rid of the zombies below, and we're going to enter the city. Steve, do you remember the task I arranged? This chapter is not over yet. Please click on the next page to continue reading." "I know, you're too long-winded." The arrangement Chris mentioned refers to the timing of Steve's shooting. After seeing that the people of GIMZ were wearing silencers, he decided to let the GIMZ take the lead in the attack. By the way, it will temper Steve's impatience. Daria just responded with a word, and then pulled the trigger, killing all three zombies. The crowd slid down the slope under the cover of her and Carlos, and then covered the two of them in turn, and then continued to move forward. This outbreak almost enveloped the entire town at the same time, so they didn't say to go to the town's emergency shelter first, that is, the police station, school, city hall, and other places to confirm. The incident happened at night, so most residents were resting at home, or going to bars and other places to hang out, but no matter what, Many people fled to the streets and mutated after the incident, so they did not have a smooth journey. But the zombies here are not dense, so Chris and others can easily deal with them. At the same time, they did not shout to ask if there were any survivors. Although the muzzle of the gun was covered with a silencer, the sound of the gun could still be distinguished, which was enough to attract survivors. There are no survivors. Chris's face was covered with a layer of haze. Hundreds of meters deep into the town, they only saw zombies gnawing on corpses, zombies doing shameful things, and zombies shouting cold and then throwing themselves into the sea of fire. These zombies can speak human language, because their intelligence has not degenerated. Shwerui asked the question and continued, and it feels to me that they are more like people who have degenerated into beasts than zombies. Has the FBC captured zombies for research? Carlos could not answer the other party's question. Chris said, it's useless to have them. They won't tell us, unless we can find out something and force them to tell us. But we don't have permission to catch zombies for research. Chris, can we get permission from B.S.A.A? Chris answered Carlos' question, no, the researchers from BSAA have asked me to submit an application, but it was rejected. The researchers even went to O'Brien, but he still failed after communicating with the lighthouse. Because Morgan was very smart, he asked the FBC and the Lighthouse Military's Biochemical Virus Research Institute to conduct cooperative research. Taylor and Sue, who were chased by the zombies, were getting farther and farther away from their home, which made him even more anxious and regretful of what he had done before. For example, telling the people of BSAA the location of his home. After he got out of his angry state, he realized that the other party was not unwilling to help him after Sue reminded him. Hey, Taylor, there's gunfire. The two were hiding in an alley when they suddenly heard faint gunfire. It's the BSAA or the survivors. Taylor also decided that he must seize the opportunity this time. The two carefully avoided the garbage on the ground and walked to the side of the alley. They were afraid of being killed as zombies, so they shouted and waved their hands to signal to the people not far away. We are here. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 298. You're fine. Chris breathed a sigh of relief, but because they were wearing masks, Taylor didn't see Chris' relaxed expression. Later, Taylor asked the other party to help him find his parents, so he immediately said, sorry, I shouldn't have run away by myself. Chris shook his head and replied, it's okay, let's go. Where is your home? Let's go to your parents' house first, but no matter what the result is, you will go to the evacuation point and wait for the helicopter to come. I promise you. Go this way. Taylor's head suddenly raised. He did not expect that the other party would first offer to help him, which made him even more convinced that he had misunderstood the other party. With Chris and the others escorting him, Taylor quickly arrived in front of his small garden, past Carlos who was walking at the front, and pushed open the wooden door directly. However, when he saw the ajar front door, he was heartbroken. The bad premonition became stronger. Without waiting for the people behind him to catch up, he pushed the door open and rushed in, anxiously calling his parents' names, Dad, Mom. Are you still here? I'm Taylor. No one responded, including the pet dog at home, which was also missing. Just when Taylor was about to go upstairs to check the situation, he saw a figure walking down from the second floor. After dealing with the zombies that were alerted by Taylor's shouting, Chris and others also entered Taylor's house. When they saw a figure appearing, they immediately took a flashlight and shined it. Not surprisingly, Taylor's mother was also affected, with black liquid leaking from her eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. Carlos raised his gun and was about to shoot. Taylor opened his arms and stood directly in front of the gun. He said, my mother can still be saved. Listen. Son, you're back, it's a rare trip home, why don't you stay at home? Why do you come back at this time? Taelong's mother spoke in a low tone. Stop shooting, Chris ordered. Carlos didn't raise his gun again, but the All-Angel team still looked at Taylor's mother warily. With 6 people and 6 guns, Taylor alone couldn't stop them. The reason why Chris did this was because this was the first time they saw a zombie that could talk, and the words he spoke were quite long, so they needed to observe the situation. After all, Chris and the others had previously used guns to kill zombies from a distance, so they had never discovered this before. "Hey, Mom. Where's Dad?" Taylor turned around and looked at his mother. He was very happy to see that his mother was still alive, and he didn't care about his mother's strangeness. Here it is. Taylor's mother threw down what she was holding in her right hand, and the handsaw her mother held in her left hand also appeared in front of everyone. What rolled down to Taylor's feet was his father's head, with a piece of meat still in his mouth. He was so shocked that he almost collapsed and shouted hysterically. "Give me the gun." Sue remained calm at this time, because her boyfriend's parents had just met for the first time today. "You guys, go and be vigilant around here. I'll handle it here." Chris gave the order and asked Carlos to lead his team and monitor the surrounding situation with Steve. He was responsible for watching Taylor and Sue. Taylor's mother walked slowly down the stairs, still complaining, "I'm tired of your father, tired of all his shit." Chris raised his gun and was ready to shoot at any time, but Taylor's mother, who came to the attack distance, did not attack Taylor. Instead, she raised a handsaw and said, "I have wanted to do that to that old guy for a long time. I am very hungry. I gave birth to you. Now that you are back, it is time to return to my body." "Chris, the enemy is coming outside." Chris was still wondering whether Taylor's mother's current state was a human or a zombie, when he heard Carlos's voice coming from the earphones. Soon, gunfire rang out and he needed to make a decision as soon as possible. Taylor's mother suddenly rushed towards Taylor, raised her handsaw high and struck at Taylor. "Taylor," Sue shouted, pulling away from Taylor to avoid the blow, "cheer up." And Chris also fired at the moment Taylor's mother kicked off the attack, hitting the center of the eyebrow and ending the opponent. Taylor threw Sue away like a madman. Sue stumbled and hit the cabinet on the side. Blood flowed from his head. However, he did not look at his injured girlfriend and threw himself directly on his mother, crying bitterly. "Are you okay?" Chris ran over and helped Sue up and asked. "I'm fine, Taylor." Ugh. Sue didn't blame Taylor, she just felt sorry for her boyfriend's experience. With tears streaming down his face, Taylor grabbed the shotgun next to him, raised it and aimed it at Chris, tears streaming down his face, and shouted, "You pay for my mother's life." "Are you crazy?" Unexpectedly, Sue stood directly in front of Chris, making him unable to lift the gun and blocking the muzzle of his boyfriend's gun. On the other side, Sherry, who returned to the house, raised her gun and aimed it at Taylor in the dark, with her finger on the trigger. She had received the order from Carlos through the team channel and entered the house to assist Chris. There was a gunshot without a silencer outside the house, but the person inside did not pull the trigger because of it. Chris said, "You know, she has become." "Shut up. Can't my mother still speak fluently? This is not the same as the zombies on TV. She is just sick. As long as we find whether or not a zombie can speak is not the only criterion for defining it. Let's not talk about whether there is a treatment. When she recovers, how will she face dismembering your father with her own hands? How will she face the fact that she wants to kill you?" Chris's words were like a needle, piercing Taylor's heart. This chapter is not over yet. Please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Taylor is indeed a time bomb as Carlos thought, and it will indeed pose a threat to his team, so Carlos will specially send Shwerui to assist Chris. But Taylor, we have no other choice. Looking at the blood flowing down Sue's forehead, Taylor put down the gun in his hand. In addition to sadness, he also felt guilty about his girlfriend. "Chris, Take in a survivor. Carlos dealt with all the zombies that approached and walked into the room. Shwerui secretly told Carlos what happened in the room just now through the team channel. Carlos nodded and asked Shwerui to keep an eye on Taylor. Taylor. You're so good. The survivor following Carlos saw Taylor and said happily, but then he saw the person falling on the stairs. Wearing a gas mask, he walked up to Taylor and patted him on the shoulder. A moment of silence. The survivor was a big-bellied uncle named Erwin Gager. He also watched Taylor grow up. When he heard the gunshots from Taylor's house, he ran out of his house to see if rescue had arrived. But he only had a 6-round revolver in his hand, and he quickly ran out of bullets. He couldn't reload bullets under high pressure. Fortunately, he was not far from Taylor's house. Erwin, who was later discovered by Daria, survived successfully under the cover of the sniper. Sue nodded, I'm fine, what should we do next? According to the original plan, we escort you to the edge of the town, and then you go to the evacuation point, and we continue the search and rescue operation, Chris said after bandaging Sue's wound. Taylor stopped making trouble and nodded heavily on the side. Uncle Erwin could finally breathe a sigh of relief. He didn't want to stay here for a moment. By the way, Uncle, do you know where there are survivors? Carlos asked. There should be another place. Do you have a town map? I'll mark it for you. Uncle Erwin didn't confirm it either, but he saw that the light of the house had been turned on and off, using Morse code to convey information. But he was still in shock at the time, so he didn't dare to go there rashly. When he was mentally prepared, the light was already on. After marking the location, Chris and his team sent Taylor and others to the edge of the town. Taylor and his 3 people, one holding a shotgun, one holding a revolver, and one holding a baseball bat, should be able to cross the forest to the evacuation point. After all, Chris and his team didn't encounter any threats in the forest along the way, so Taylor and his team just needed to be cautious. Sue and his team had no complaints about Chris and his team not escorting them all the way, because there were still survivors waiting for them to rescue. After watching them enter the forest, Chris called a helicopter to pick up people at the evacuation point, and then led the team back to the town and headed towards the target location. Did we encounter zombies in this biochemical crisis? Steve's voice rang out in the originally quiet communication channel. If they can still be saved, aren't we doing something wrong? Chris didn't know how to answer this question for a moment, and Carlos took over. Are you saying that you should give up your life for people who don't know whether they can be cured? Give up those survivors. I didn't say that, don't misinterpret my words, Steve quickly denied. But this is a very likely result. Carlos naturally knew that Steve didn't mean that, and continued, I once met someone with this idea in Raccoon City. He trapped all the zombies in the house because he thought those zombies could still be saved, but they were just sick, and he also prevented others from solving those zombies. What happened in the end? The zombies broke through the door and bit him to death. Only 2 of the 7 survivors with him escaped and were saved by me. Carlos' words made Steve silent. We saw the target location. Chris raised his hand and asked the team to stop, and he leaned out to confirm the only room with lights on the street. The surroundings were very quiet, and there were not many active zombies. Then Dahlia cleared the road and everyone came to the house. The curtains of the house were drawn up, and it looked like there were survivors inside, but Chris was curious whether this would attract zombies. The main door was not ajar, but it was not locked either. They pushed the door carefully and walked in. Are there guests? A very weak voice sounded in the living room. Chris asked the team members to move forward carefully, came to the living room, and saw the owner of the voice. We are the rescue of BasedonaMovie. With the experience of Taylor's mother, the other party seemed to be a rational person, so Chris did not shoot the other party directly, both to confirm whether it was a special case and because the other party was different from the zombies he had seen before. The person in front of him only had black eyes and did not ooze black liquid. Finding the source, rescuing survivors, and collecting information on biochemical viruses or other things are all the work of BSAA. Haha, don't worry, I haven't completely lost my mind. The other party's words were still very smooth, but his tone was a bit tired. How long can you last? We're calling a helicopter to rescue you now. Chris put down his weapon and asked. The other party shook his head gently and said, I'm hopeless. Take the tape recorder. He was referring to the tape recorder on the cabinet next to him, and there was a broken gas mask on the ground. This damn world, why did this damn thing happen to me? I'm sorry, I really can't control my thoughts right now. What effect does the black smoke have on the human nervous system? This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. As he said that, the uncle turned his attention to Swearui. Although Swearui was wearing a gas mask and combat uniform, it still couldn't completely hide her figure. The uncle put away his gaze and continued, when I see a woman now, I will have the idea of pinning her down and having sex with her. I'm sorry. What is this tape recorder recording? Carlos asked. Black liquid began to seep out of the uncle's eye sockets, and he replied, I have been recording the changes that occurred after I was infected, as well as the reasons why this happened to me, the source of this disaster, and other things. After watching Chris take away the tape recorder, the uncle continued, the substances in the black smoke that infect the whole town will have a strong impact on the brains and bodies of humans, or all animals. He was telling how he felt about his own changes, so Chris didn't turn off the tape recorder. I could sense what was happening outside, but I gradually began to lose control of my behavior, including those rude words. Furthermore, after infection, it seems that the energy in the body will be consumed crazily, and I can obviously feel more and more hungry now. I think this is why infected people outside will take a few bites after catching their prey, even if they are also infected. The uncle was resisting the urge in his heart to eat the humans in front of him, and no one interrupted each other to ask anything. They already know that each other's time is numbered. At the same time, this substance will also degrade the human brain, making people more primitive and barbaric, no different from beasts. Hearing this, Chris and the others recalled what they had seen along the way and nodded profoundly in agreement. Ahem, the black liquid was spat out, and black liquid was also flowing out of his ears, and his hearing function was gradually disappearing. What follows is my guess. In the end, primitive desires will dominate human thought, and the basic motivational functions will be destroyed, leaving only mechanical actions to vent desires, just like the zombies on TV. The infection mutated faster and faster, and black liquid flowed out of all the uncle's orifices. I'm going to mutate soon, last thing, help me out, I don't want to be that beast. I know. Chris nodded and took out his pistol, thank you for your help. Oh, thank you, the uncle smiled. Gunshots rang out, and more zombies began to surround them.